Verse for opening a sutra. The unsurpassed profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of aeons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. The Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 39, Entering the Dharma Realm, Part 2, The 10 Good Teachers of the 10 Dwellings. 1. The dwelling of bringing forth the resolve. At that time, Manjusri Bodhisattva, after speaking the verses, told the youth good wealth, good indeed, good men, you have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, to seek the conduct of a Bodhisattva. Good men, if living beings can bring forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, this is a difficult thing indeed. Moreover, upon bringing forth the resolve, if they further wish to seek the Bodhisattva conduct, this is twice as hard. Good men, if one wishes to accomplish the wisdom of all wisdom, then one must decisively seek a true good-knowing advisor. Good men, in seeking for a good-knowing advisor, do not become weary or lax, and upon seeing a good-knowing advisor, do not become satiated. As to a good-knowing advisor and all his teachings, you must follow and accord. As to expedient devices employed by a good-knowing advisor, do not find faults. Good men, south of here is a kingdom called Supreme Bliss. Within that kingdom is a mountain called Wonderful Summit, and on that mountain is a bhikshu named Cloud of Virtue. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct, how a bodhisattva cultivates the bodhisattva conduct, up to and including how a bodhisattva can swiftly perfect the conducts of universal worthy. The bhikshu Cloud of Virtue will proclaim all of this for you. At that time, upon hearing this, the youth good wealth leapt for joy. He bowed at his feet, circumambulated him countless times, and gazed up at him with longing admiration. He sorrowfully wept. He bade farewell and took his leave and went south. He went toward the kingdom of supreme bliss and ascended Wonderful Summit Mountain. To the east, west, south, north, the 4 intermediate directions above and below, he looked around and sought, with thirsty aspirations, wishing to see the bhikshu Cloud of Virtue. After 7 days, he espied the bhikshu on another mountain, leisurely taking a stroll. Upon seeing this, he went to bow at his feet, circumambulated him 3 times to the right, and then stopped before him and said, Sagely One, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I do not know yet how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct, how he cultivates the bodhisattva conduct, up to and including how he can swiftly perfect the conduct of universal worthy. I heard that the Sagely One is skilled at guiding and teaching. I only hope you will compassionately proclaim how it is that a bodhisattva accomplishes Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. At that time, the bhikshu Cloud of Virtue told good wealth, good indeed, good men, you have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Moreover, you can inquire about the bodhisattva conduct. To do such a thing is difficult within the difficult. That is to say, seeking the bodhisattva conduct, seeking the state of a bodhisattva, seeking the path of escape of a bodhisattva, seeking the pure path of a bodhisattva, seeking the pure vast great mind of a bodhisattva, seeking the spiritual penetrations accomplished by a bodhisattva, seeking the liberation doors that a bodhisattva makes appear, seeking the worldly karma manifested by a bodhisattva, seeking the mind of a bodhisattva that accords with living beings, seeking the Bodhisattva's gate of birth and death, and Nirvana, seeking the Bodhisattva's contemplation of the conditioned and unconditioned without any attachment in his mind. Good men, I've attained a comfortable, decisive power of understanding. My eye of faith is pure, and my wisdom light radiates. Universally, I regard all states and have left behind all obstructions. I can skillfully contemplate. My universal eye is lucid and bright. I am replete with pure conduct. I can travel to the countries of the 10 directions, revere and make offerings to all Buddhas. I can forever be mindful of all Buddhas thus come once, unite, uphold the proper Dharma of all Buddhas, and constantly behold all Buddhas of the 10 directions. That is to say, to the eastern direction, seeing one Buddha, 2 Buddhas, 10 Buddhas, 100 Buddhas, 1,000 Buddhas, 100,000 Buddhas, 100 million Buddhas, 1 billion Buddhas, 1,000 billion Buddhas, 100,000 billion Buddhas, 1 million Nayutas of Buddhas, 100 million Nayutas of Buddhas, 1,000 million Nayutas of Buddhas, 100,000 million Nayutas of Buddhas, to the point of seeing countless, limitless, boundless, unequal, uncountable, inestimable, inconceivable, immeasurable, ineffable, ineffably ineffable Buddhas, to the point of seeing Buddhas as many as dust motes in Jambudvipa, Buddhas as many as dust motes in one set of 4 continents, Buddhas as many as dust motes in 1,000 world systems, Buddhas as many as dust motes in a 2,000 world system, Buddhas as many as dust motes in a 3,000 world system, Buddhas as numerous as dust motes in 10 Buddha Kshetriyas, up to and including Buddhas as many as dust motes in ineffably ineffable Buddha Kshetriyas. As it is in the east, so it is too in the south, west, north, the 4 intermediate directions above and below. In each direction, all of these Buddhas, with their various physical appearances, their various features, their various spiritual penetrations, their various playfulness, their various assemblies which adorn the way places, their various lights that illumine without limit, their various countries, their various lifespans, accord with the various delights in the minds of all living beings. They manifest the various doors of accomplishing proper enlightenment. Within the great assembly, they emit the lion's roar. Good men, I have only obtained this Dharma door of recollecting all the Buddha states of wisdom, light, and universal vision, but how could I possibly know the doors of the conduct of all great Bodhisattvas' boundless, pure wisdom? There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha, with a universally shining wisdom light, whereby one always sees the adornments and purity of the various palaces in all Buddha countries. There is a door of causing all beings to be mindful of the Buddha, whereby one accords with what pleases living beings' minds and causes them to obtain purity from seeing the Buddhas. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha that enables one to dwell securely within the powers whereby one is caused to enter the thus come one's 10 powers. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha that enables one to dwell securely in the Dharma, whereby one can see limitless Buddhas and listen to Dharma. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha, of illumining all directions, whereby one can see within all worlds the seas of Buddhas that are equal and without discrimination. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of entry to invisible places, whereby one can see within all subtle and minute states all matters involving the sovereign spiritual penetrations of all Buddhas. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in all kalpas, whereby throughout all kalpas one always sees the acts of giving done by all Buddhas without leaving them for even a moment. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha, of dwelling throughout all times, whereby in every time, all times, one always sees the dust come once, draws near to them without leaving them. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in all kshetriyas, whereby in all countries one completely sees the Buddha's bodies that transcend everything and are unmatched by anything. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in all worlds, whereby, in accordance with the wishes and delights of one's own mind, one universally sees the dust come once of the three periods of time. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in all states, whereby pervasively in all states one sees the successive appearances of the dust come once. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in still extinction, whereby in a single thought one sees the Buddhas in all kshetriyas manifesting nirvana. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in distant traveling, whereby in a single thought one sees all Buddhas departing from the places where they live. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in vast greatness, whereby one's mind always contemplates all the Buddha's bodies, pervading all Dharma realms. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in subtlety, whereby on a single hair tip ineffable dust come once appear, and one can go to all their places and serve them. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in adornment, whereby in one thought, within all kshetriyas, one sees Buddhas accomplishing equal and proper enlightenment and manifesting spiritual transformations. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in Buddha affairs, whereby one sees all Buddhas appearing in the world, emitting wisdom light and turning the Dharma wheel. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in the comfortable mind, whereby one knows that according to all the wishes and delights of one's own mind, all Buddhas manifest their reflections. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in one's own karma, whereby one knows that according to the karma which living beings accumulate, their own reflections manifest to facilitate their enlightenment. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in spiritual transformations, whereby one sees the Buddha seated on vast great lotus flowers that blossom everywhere throughout the Dharma realm. There is a door of mindfulness of the Buddha of dwelling in empty space, whereby one contemplates all thus come once clouds of bodies that adorn the Dharma realm. And how can I possibly know or speak of such conduct of merit and virtue? Good men, south of here is a kingdom called Gate of the Sea. There is a bhikshu known as Sea Cloud. Go to where he is and ask him how Bodhisattva studies the Bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the Bodhisattva path. The bhikshu Sea Cloud can speak discriminately the causal conditions of bringing forth vast, great good roots. Good men, the bhikshu Sea Cloud will enable you to enter the vast, great position of the aids to the way. He will enable you to bring forth the power of vast, great good roots. He will speak for you the causes of bringing forth the Bodhi resolve. He will enable you to give rise to the light of the vast, great vehicle. He will enable you to cultivate the vast, great paramitas. He will enable you to enter the vast, great sea of all conducts. He will enable you to perfect the vast, great wheel of vows. He will enable you to purify the vast, great door of adornments. He will enable you to give rise to the power of vast, great kindness and compassion. At that time, the youth good wealth bowed to the bhikshu cloud of virtue, circumambulated him to the right, gazed up at him, bade farewell, and took his leave. 2. Dwelling on the ground of regulation. At that time, the youth Good Wealth single-mindedly pondered the teaching of the good knowing advisor. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of wisdom light. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the Bodhisattva's door of liberation. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the Bodhisattva's door of samadhi. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the Bodhisattva's door to the great sea. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's manifestations. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's way places. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's guiding rules. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's equality with the realm of empty space. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's successive appearances. With proper mindfulness, he contemplated the door of all Buddha's entries into expedience. He gradually went south until he arrived at the kingdom gate of the sea. At the place of the bhikshu's sea cloud, he bowed at his feet. After circumambulating to the right, he put his palms together before him and said, Sagely One, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. I wish to enter all of the seas of unsurpassed wisdom, and yet I do not know how a bodhisattva can renounce the mundane home of the world and be born in the thus come one's household, or how one can cross over the sea of birth and death and enter the Buddha's wisdom sea, or how one can leave the ground of an ordinary person and enter the thus come one's grounds, how one can sever the flow of birth and death and enter the flow of the bodhisattva's conduct, how one can smash the wheel of birth and death and accomplish the bodhisattva's wheel of vows, how one can destroy the demon states and manifest the Buddha states, how one can dry up the sea of love and desire and increase the sea of great compassion, how one can close all the doors of all difficulties and evil destinies and open all the doors of great nirvana, how one can leave the city of the triple realm and enter the city of all wisdom, how one can renounce all objects of delight and enjoyment and benefit all living beings. At that time, the bhikshu's sea cloud asked the youth Good Wealth, Good men, have you already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi? Good Wealth answered, Yes, I've brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Sea Cloud said, Good men, if living beings have not planted good roots, they cannot bring forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. One must obtain the light of good roots of the door to universality, become replete with the samadhi wisdom light of the true path, give rise to various vast and great seas of blessings, and nurture pristine and pure dharmas without laziness or resting. One must serve good knowing advisors without becoming tired or satiated. One must disregard one's body and life. One must not conceal or hoard. One's mind must be level like the earth without ups and downs. One's nature must always compassionately pity all living beings. With concentrated mindfulness, one must never forsake all destinies of existence. One must constantly take delight in contemplating the thus come one states. In such a way, one can bring forth the Bodhi resolve. As for bringing forth the Bodhi resolve, it means one brings forth a great, compassionate mind in order to universally save all beings. One brings forth a great, kind mind in order to equally protect all worlds. One brings forth a tranquil and happy mind in order to cause all beings to destroy the sufferings. One brings forth a mind of beneficence in order to cause all beings to separate from evil dharmas. One brings forth a sympathetic mind in order to guard all those who are afraid. One brings forth an unobstructed mind, in order to leave behind all obstructions. One brings forth a vast, great mind, in order to pervade all Dharma realms. One brings forth a boundless mind, because one is equal to the realm of empty space, and there is nowhere one does not go. One brings forth a broad, extensive mind, because one sees all the dust come once. One brings forth a pure mind, because one does not contradict the wisdom of the Dharmas of the three periods of time. One brings forth the mind of all wisdom, because one universally enters the seas of all wisdom. Good men, I've lived in this country, gate of the sea, for 12 years. I have always regarded the sea as my state. Specifically, I have pondered how the great sea is vast and extensive without measure. I have pondered how the great sea is profoundly deep and hard to fathom. I have pondered the gradual deepening and widening of the great sea. I have pondered the limitless, rare, wonderful, and adorned jewels within the great sea. I have pondered the immeasurable amount of water that is gathered by the great sea. I have pondered the inconceivability of the different colors of the water in the great sea. I have pondered the great sea as the dwelling place for limitless living creatures. I have pondered how the great sea encompasses the various beings with large bodies. I have pondered how the great sea receives the rain that the large clouds pour down. I have pondered how the great sea is without increase or decrease. Good men, when I was contemplating, I also had this thought: within this world, is there anything more broad and extensive than this sea? Is there anything more immeasurable than this sea? Is there anything deeper than this sea? Is there anything more rare and special than this sea? Good men, at the moment I was having that thought, suddenly from the depths of the sea, a large lotus flower emerged. Invincible Indranila jewels made up the stem. Vaidurya gems formed its calyx. Jambunada gold made up its leaves. Sinking in water incense made up its platform. Carnelian formed its fine filaments. It bloomed with a lush fragrance that covered the sea. 1,000,000 Asura kings upheld its stem. 1,000,000 nets adorned with money jewels hovered above it. 1,000,000 dragon kings rained down fragrant water upon it. 1,000,000 Garuda kings dangled from their big strings of beads and jeweled silk ribbons which hung down all around it. 1,000,000 Raksasa kings contemplated it with a mind of kindness. 1,000,000 Yaksha kings bowed to it with reverence. 1,000,000 Gandharva kings praised it with all sorts of music as offerings. 1,000,000 heavenly kings rained down heavenly flowers, heavenly garlands, heavenly fragrances, heavenly burning incense, heavenly paste incense, heavenly powdered incense, wonderful heavenly robes, heavenly banners, streamers, and canopies. 1,000,000 Brahma kings bowed in reverence. 1,000,000 gods from the pure dwelling heavens placed their palms together and made obeisance. 1,000,000 wheel-turning kings each made offerings of adornments of the 7 jewels. 1,000,000 sea spirits appeared simultaneously and respectfully bowed. 1,000,000 light-flavored money jewels universally illumined. 1,000,000 pure blessings money jewels formed an adornment. 1,000,000 universal light money jewels served as its pure treasury. There were 1,000,000 supreme money jewels, their light radiant and dazzling. There were 1,000,000 wonderful treasury money jewels, their light radiating infinitely. There were 1,000,000 Jambu banner money jewels, successively arranged in rows. There were 1,000,000 Vajra lion money jewels, indestructible, pure, and adorning. There were 1,000,000 sun treasury money jewels, vast, great, and pure. There were 1,000,000 delightful money jewels, replete with various colors. There were 1,000,000 as you will money jewels, their adornments endless, their effulgence dazzling. This great lotus flower was born from the transcendental good roots of the Thus Come One's appearances in the world, and was a source of faith and rejoicing for all bodhisattvas. Within the 10 directions worlds, there was no place where it did not appear. It was born from dharmas that are like an illusion. It was born from dharmas that are like a dream. It was born from pure karma. It was adorned by the Dharma door of non-contention. It entered the seal of the unconditioned. It dwelt in the door of non-obstruction. It filled up all countries of the 10 directions. It complied with the most profound states of the Buddhas throughout countless hundreds of thousands of kalpas. Its merit and virtue could not be praised to exhaustion. At that time, I saw atop the lotus flower a Thus Come One seated in full lotus, his body extended all the way up to the summit of existence. His jeweled lotus flower throne was inconceivable. His way places and assembly were inconceivable. The accomplishment of his marks was inconceivable. The perfection of his minor characteristics was inconceivable. His spiritual penetrations and transformations were inconceivable. The purity of his physical characteristics was inconceivable. The mark of his invisible crown was inconceivable. His vast and long tongue was inconceivable. His good and clever speech was inconceivable. The full and resonant sounds of his voice were inconceivable. His boundless powers were inconceivable. His pure fearlessnesses were inconceivable. His vast, great eloquences were inconceivable. Moreover, I recollected that the conducts this Buddha had cultivated in the past were inconceivable, that his accomplishments of the way with self-mastery were inconceivable, that the wonderful voices with which he proclaimed Dharma were inconceivable, that his universal door of manifesting all sorts of adornments was inconceivable, that everything around him was inconceivable, each singularly distinctive to look at, that his perfection of all benefits was inconceivable. At that time, the Thus Come One stretched out his right hand and rubbed me on the crown and spoke for me, the universal I, Dharma door. It revealed the states of all Thus Come Ones. It disclosed and expounded all conducts of all bodhisattvas. It explained the wonderful dharmas of all Buddhas. All wheels of Dharma entered within it. It could purify all Buddha countries. It could defeat all heterodox ways and deviant theories. It could destroy all demon armies. It could cause all living beings to be happy. It could illuminate the workings of activity in all beings' minds. It could understand the faculties of all beings. According to living beings' hearts, it could cause them to become enlightened. From the place of that Thus Come One, I heard of this Dharma door. I received, upheld, and recited it. I mindfully recollected it and held it in contemplation. If someone used as much ink as there is water in the great seas, and a stack of pens as high as Mount Sumeru to write out this universal I Dharma door, he would not express the slightest fraction of a single door within a single chapter, or a single Dharma within a single door, or a single meaning within a single Dharma, or a single phrase within a single meaning. How much the less would he be able to thoroughly exhaust it? Good men, I've lived at that Buddhist place for 1200 years, receiving and upholding this universal I Dharma door, day after day, through the Dharani brightness of listening and holding. I receive countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of the door of quiet stillness, I enter countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of boundless revolvings, I universally enter countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of contemplation according to the grounds, I discriminate countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of awesome power, I universally gather in countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of lotus flower adornments, I discover countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of the sounds of pure words, I proclaim countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of the treasury of empty space, I manifest countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of accumulated radiance, I increase and expand countless chapters. Through the Dharani brightness of the treasury of seas, I expound and analyze countless chapters. If living beings arrive from the 10 directions, whether gods or heavenly kings, dragons or dragon kings, yakshas or yaksha kings, Gandharvas or Gandharva kings, asuras or asura kings, Garudas or Garuda kings, Kinnaras or Kinnara kings, Mahoragas or Mahoraga kings, humans or human kings, Brahmas or Brahma kings, for all these beings who come to where I am, I give thorough instruction, explanation, exaltation, and praise. I cause them all to delight in, enter into, and dwell securely in this universal I Dharma door of the light of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas' conducts. Good men, I only know this universal I Dharma door. But as to how all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, deeply enter the sea of all Bodhisattva conducts in order to follow their vow power in cultivation, how they enter the sea of great vows in order to dwell for limitless kalpas in the world, how they enter the sea of all living beings in accord with their mind's delights so as to vastly benefit them, how they enter the sea of all living beings' hearts in order to bring forth unobstructed wisdom light of the 10 powers, how they enter the sea of all living beings' faculties in order to teach and transform them at the opportune time and make them all tamed and subdued, how they enter the sea of all kshatriyas in order to fulfill their original vows to adorn and purify Buddha kshatriyas, how they enter the sea of all Buddhas because they have vowed to forever make offerings to all thus come ones, how they enter the sea of all dharmas because they can enlighten to all of them through wisdom, how they enter the sea of all merits and virtues in order to cultivate each one of them to perfection, how they enter the sea of all living beings' languages and words in order within all kshatriyas to turn the proper dharma wheel. How could I possibly know or speak of such conduct of merit and virtue? Good men, travel to the south for 60 yojanas. Along the road to Lanka, there is a village called Seashore. There is a bhikshu there called Good Dwelling. Go there and ask him how one purifies the bodhisattva conduct. At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at the feet of Sea Cloud, circumambulated him to the right, gazed up in admiration at him, bade farewell, and took his leave. 3. Dwelling of cultivation. At that time, the youth Good Wealth single-mindedly recollected the teachings of his good-knowing advisor. He single-mindedly recollected the universal I Dharma door. He single-mindedly recollected the Buddha's spiritual powers. He single-mindedly held the clouds of phrases of Dharma. He single-mindedly entered the door of the sea of Dharma. He single-mindedly pondered the differences in Dharmas. He deeply entered the whirlpool of Dharma. He universally entered the emptiness of Dharma. He purified the cataract-like obstructions to Dharma. He contemplated the place of Dharma treasures. He gradually proceeded south on the road to Lanka and arrived at the village Seashore. He looked throughout the 10 directions in search of good dwelling, He saw the bhikshu walking back and forth in empty space, while a countless number of gods surrounded him in veneration. Heavenly flowers were strewn, while heavenly music played, and countless streamers, banners, silken fabrics, and garments filled up empty space as offerings. All the great dragon kings in empty space wrought inconceivable clouds of sinking in water fragrance, and roused the thunder and stirred up the lightning as an offering. Kinara kings played various kinds of music, praising him in accordance with Dharma as an offering. Mahoraga kings twirled and billowed inconceivable, exquisitely fine garments, ornamenting empty space, and from their hearts bringing forth joyous delight as an offering. Asura kings wrought inconceivable clouds of money gems, which, with their measureless lights and all sorts of adornments, pervaded empty space as an offering. Garuda kings transformed themselves into the shapes of pure youths, surrounded by measureless heavenly maidens, and ultimately accomplished the mind of no killing or harming. In empty space they put their palms together as an offering. There were an inconceivable number of Raksasa ghost kings, surrounded by measureless Raksasas, the shapes tall, gigantic, and fearsome. Upon seeing the compassionate ease and comfort of the bhikshu good dwelling, they bowed, put their palms together, and gazed up in admiration. An inconceivable number of Yaksha ghost kings, each of them circumambulated by their retinues, were stationed on all four sides, respectfully guarding and protective. An inconceivable number of Brahma heaven kings bowed in empty space, put their palms together, and used human dharmas as praises and glorification. An inconceivable number of gods from the pure dwelling heavens were in empty space, replete with their palaces. They respectfully put their palms together and brought forth magnanimous vows. When the youth good wealth beheld all of these events, his heart grew joyous. Putting his palms together and respectfully making obeisance, he said, "Sagely one, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. However, I still do not know how a bodhisattva cultivates Buddha Dharmas, how he accumulates Buddha Dharmas, how he becomes endowed with Buddha Dharmas, how he becomes saturated with Buddha Dharmas, how he increases and grows in Buddha Dharmas, how he unites and gathers in Buddha Dharmas, how he brings Buddha Dharmas to the ultimate, how he purifies and regulates Buddha Dharmas, how he profoundly purifies Buddha Dharmas, how he penetrates Buddha Dharmas. I heard that the Sagely One is adept at guiding and teaching. I wish you will compassionately tell me how a bodhisattva never gives up seeing the Buddhas, but forever diligently cultivates where they are, how a bodhisattva never forsakes other bodhisattvas, but shares with them the same good roots, how a bodhisattva does not renounce Buddha Dharmas, but obtains understanding and certification from wisdom, how a bodhisattva does not renounce great vows, but can universally benefit all living beings, how a bodhisattva does not renounce the multitude of conducts, but dwells throughout all kalpas without his mind becoming tired, how a bodhisattva does not renounce the Buddha Kshetriyas, but universally adorns and purifies all worlds, how a bodhisattva does not renounce the Buddha's powers, but knows and sees the thus come one's ease and comfort, how a bodhisattva does not renounce conditioned existence, and yet also does not dwell in it, but universally in all destinies of existence, just like transformations, makes appear the undergoing of birth and death, and cultivates the bodhisattva conduct, how a bodhisattva does not renounce hearing the Dharma, but can completely comprehend and receive the proper teachings of all Buddhas, How a bodhisattva does not renounce the light of wisdom, but universally enters the place of operation of wisdom of the three periods of time. At that time, the bhikshu good dwelling said to good wealth, good indeed, good men, you have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, and now you have furthermore brought forth the resolve to inquire about Buddha Dharmas, the Dharmas of all wisdom, and the Dharmas of the self-produced. Good men, I have already accomplished an unobstructed liberation door of a bodhisattva, whether in coming or going, in moving or stopping, I can consider accordingly. I cultivate and contemplate and immediately obtain a wisdom light, which is called ultimate non-obstruction. Because I've attained this wisdom light, I know of the activities in the minds of all living beings without obstruction. I know of the deaths and births of all living beings without obstruction. I know of the past lives of all living beings without obstruction. I know all the events of living beings in future kalpas without obstruction. I know all the events of living beings in the present period without obstruction. I know all the varieties of languages, speech and sounds of all living beings without obstruction. I resolve the doubts and questions of all living beings without obstruction. I know all the faculties of living beings without obstruction. According to when all living beings should be transformed, I can go and attend to them without obstruction. I know all kashanas, lapas, muhurtas, time periods of days and nights without obstruction. I know the successive flowing and turnings of the sea of the three periods of time without obstruction. My body can travel everywhere to all Buddha Kshetriyas of the 10 directions without obstruction. Why is this? Because I've attained the psychic power of non-dwelling and non-doing. Good men, upon attaining the power of such spiritual penetrations, I can cause in empty space, or walk, or stand, or sit, or recline. I can conceal or reveal myself. I can manifest one body, or manifest many bodies. I can penetrate through walls as if through empty space. Within empty space, I sit in full lotus and come and go at ease, just like a bird in flight. I can enter into the earth as though it were water. I can tread on water as though it were earth. From the upper and lower parts of my body, I can universally emit smoke and flames like a big burning fire, or at times I quake all of the great earth. At other times my hands touch the sun and moon. I manifest a body that is tall enough to reach the Brahma palaces, or manifest burning incense clouds, or manifest jeweled flaming clouds, or manifest transforming clouds, or manifest brightness net clouds, all of them vast and great, covering the 10 directions. Or within one thought, I can travel east through one world, 2 worlds, 100 worlds, 1,000 worlds, 100,000 worlds, to the extent of measureless worlds, to the extent of ineffably ineffable worlds, or I can traverse worlds in number like dust motes in Jambudvipa, or traverse worlds in number like dust motes within ineffably ineffable Buddha Kshetriyas, and within all these Buddha countries, before the Buddhists whirl on at once, I listen to them speak the Dharma. Within each of those Buddha's places, I manifest as many different bodies as there are dust motes in limitless Buddha Kshetriyas. From each body, I rain down clouds of offerings in number, like dust motes in limitless Buddha Kshetriyas. Specifically, clouds of all flowers, clouds of all incense, clouds of all garlands, clouds of all powdered incense, clouds of all paste incense, clouds of all canopies, clouds of all garments, clouds of all banners, clouds of all streamers, and clouds of all curtains. I make these offerings with clouds of all bodies. I receive and uphold everything that each thus come one proclaims. I remember all the adornments in each country. As it is in the east, so too in the south, west, north, and for intermediate directions above and below. It is the same way. Within all of these worlds, if there are any living beings who see my form, they will certainly attain Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. I can clearly see all living beings in all of these worlds, according to whether they are large or small, superior or inferior, suffering or joyous. I manifest in a form similar to theirs to teach and transform them and bring them to accomplishment. If there are living beings who draw near to me, I will cause them all to dwell securely in this Dharma door. Good men, I only know this unobstructed liberation door of universally and swiftly making offerings to all Buddhas and bringing all living beings to accomplishment. But as to how all bodhisattvas hold the precepts of great compassion, the precepts of paramita, the precepts of the great vehicle, the precepts of connection with the bodhisattva path, the precepts of non-obstruction, the precepts of not retreating and not falling, the precepts of not abandoning the Bodhi mind, the precepts of constantly using Buddha Dharmas as one's basis, the precepts of being attentive to all wisdom, the precepts of being like empty space, the precepts of depending on nothing within all worlds, the precepts of no loss, the precepts of no deficiency, the precepts of no lack, the precepts of no admixture, the precepts of no turbidity, the precepts of no regret, the precepts of purity, the precepts of being apart from dust, the precepts of being apart from filth. How could I possibly know or speak of all of their merit and virtue? Good men, south of here is a country called Dramidapatana. In a city called Comfort and Ease is a person known as Megha. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at his feet. He circumambulated him to the right, gazing up at him with longing admiration. Then he bade farewell and took his leave. 4. Dwelling of noble birth. At that time, the youth Good Wealth, with a single mind, properly recollect the Dharma door of the Dharma's brightness. He entered it with profound faith. He single-mindedly recalled the Buddha, without severing the triple jewel. He praised the nature of being apart from desire. He recalled his good knowing adviser, who universally illumined the 3 periods of time. He recollected his great vows, which were to universally save all living beings, and to not become attached to conditioned existence. He ultimately pondered the self-nature of all dharmas. He was able to adorn and purify all worlds toward the assemblies in the way places of the Buddhas. With respect to the way places of the Buddhas, his heart was not attached. He gradually proceeded south until he arrived at the city of Comfort and Ease, and went looking for Megha. Then he saw him in the midst of a marketplace, seated upon a lion's throne, speaking Dharma. 10,000 people surrounded him, while he spoke the Dharma door of adornment with the wheel of syllables. At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at his feet, circumambulated him limitless times, and putting his palms together before him, and said, Sagely One, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I still do not know how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct, how he cultivates the bodhisattva path, how he flows and turns amid all destinies of existence, and never forgets or loses his resolve for Bodhi, how he attains a mind of level equality, which is solid and unmoving, how he attains a mind of purity, which cannot be destroyed, how he brings forth the power of great compassion and never grows weary, how he enters Dharani and universally attains to purity, how he brings forth the vast, great light of wisdom and is free from obstructing darkness regarding any dharmas, how he becomes replete with the power of unobstructed eloquence, of understanding, and decisively comprehends the treasury of all profound meanings, how he attains the power of proper mindfulness and remembers and holds all the different Dharma wheels, how he attains the power to purify the destinies and universally speaks the Dharma within all destinies, how he attains the power of wisdom and is completely able to decisively discriminate the meanings of all dharmas. At that time, Megha said to good wealth, "Good man, have you already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi?" Good wealth answered, "Yes, indeed, I've already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi." Then Megha, all of a sudden, descended from the lion's throne, prostrated his 5 limbs on the ground, and bowed to good wealth. Then he scattered gold and silver flowers, priceless precious pearls, and using supremely wonderful powdered chandana incense and a limitless variety of ornaments, covered him over from above. Moreover, he scattered a limitless variety of fragrant flowers and various other gifts as offerings. He afterwards stood up in praise, saying, good indeed, good man, that you can bring forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Good man, if someone can bring forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, then he does not sever the seeds of all Buddhas. Then he adorns and purifies all Buddha Kshatriyas. Then he brings all living beings to maturity. Then he understands the nature of all dharmas. Then he enlightens to and comprehends the seeds of all karma. Then he perfects all conduct. Then he does not sever all great vows. Then he understands in reality as it is, the separateness from the seed nature of greed. Then he can clearly see all the differences within the 3 periods of time. Then he causes his faith and understanding to become forever firm and solid. Then he is maintained and aided by all thus come once. Then he is recollected by all Buddhas. Then he becomes the same as all Bodhisattvas. Then he is lauded by and pleases all worthy sages. Then he is revered and adored by all Brahma kings. Then he is one to whom all the heavenly lords make offerings. Then he is protected by all yakshas. Then he is attended by all raksasas. Then he is welcomed by all dragon kings. Then he is one whom the Kinara kings praise in songs and chants. Then he is one whom all worldly lords will extol and delight over. Then he causes all the realms of living beings to attain peace and security. That is to say, by causing them to renounce the evil destinies, by causing them to escape from the places of difficulties, by severing the root of all poverty, by giving rise to the bliss to all gods and humans, by encountering and drawing near to good knowing advisers, by listening to vast great Dharma, receiving and upholding it, by bringing forth the Bodhi resolve, by purifying the Bodhi resolve, by illumining the Bodhisattva way, by entering into the wisdom of a Bodhisattva, and by dwelling on the grounds of a Bodhisattva. Good men, you should know that what a Bodhisattva does is most difficult. It is difficult for him to appear, and difficult for one to encounter him. To be able to see a Bodhisattva is twice as difficult. A Bodhisattva is one whom all living beings rely on, because he causes them to grow and brings them to accomplishment. He is the savior of all living beings because he plucks them out of suffering and hardships. He is the place where all beings take refuge, because he protects and guards the world. He is the rescuer of all beings because he delivers them from fear. The Bodhisattva is like the wind wheel. because he upholds all in the world, so that they will not fall into the evil destinies. He is like the great earth because he makes the good roots of living beings increase and grow. He is like the great sea because his blessings and virtue pervade without exhaustion. He is like the pure sun because his wisdom light universally illumines. He is like Sumeru because his good roots are lofty and transcendent. He is like the bright moon because his wisdom light appears. He is like a fierce general because he smashes and subdues demon armies. He is like an imperial lord because within the city of Buddha Dharmas, he obtains sovereignty. He is like a blazing fire because he burns up living beings' thoughts of self and love. He is like a great cloud because he lets fall limitless wonderful Dharma rain. He is like the timely rain because he causes all the roots and sprouts of faith of living beings to increase and grow. He is like a boatman because he navigates the Dharma sea, landing at a haven. He is like a bridge because he can cause one to cross over the sea of birth and death. Megha, upon thus praising good wealth, caused all the bodhisattvas to become delighted. After this he emitted various variegated lights from his face, universally illumining the trichilocosm, all of the living beings within it, who came into contact with this light, all the dragons, spirits up to and including the Brahma gods, all came to where Megha was. Then Megha, the great Lord, employed expedients to reveal, proclaim, discriminate, and explain the Dharma door of adornment with a wheel of syllables. Upon hearing this Dharma, all of those living beings became irreversible in Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. At that time, Megha returned and ascended his seat and said to good wealth, "Good men, I've attained the wondrous sound Dharani. I can discriminate and know, within the trichilocosm, the languages of all gods, all dragons, yakshas, gandharvas, asuras, garudas, kinnaras, mahoragas, humans and non-humans, up to and including all the languages of Brahma gods. As it is with this trichilocosm, so too, throughout the 10 directions in countless, up to and including ineffably ineffable worlds, it is all the same way. Good men, I only know this Dharma door of a bodhisattva's wondrous sound Dharani light, but as to how all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, can universally enter the seas of all living beings' various thoughts, the seas of all their various creations, the seas of all their various names and terms, the seas of all their various words and languages, and how they can universally enter into speaking the seas of all profoundly secret Dharma phrases, into speaking the seas of all ultimate Dharma phrases, into speaking the seas of all Dharma phrases in which one condition can encompass all that is conditioned within the 3 periods of time, into speaking the seas of superior Dharma phrases, into speaking the seas of the utmost superior grade of Dharma phrases, into speaking the seas of differentiated Dharma phrases, into speaking the seas of all differentiated Dharma phrases, how they can universally enter into the seas of all worldly incantations, the wheel of adornment with all sounds, and the limit of the wheel of all differentiated syllables. How can I possibly know or speak of such merit and virtue? Good men, south of here is a village called Grove of Dwelling, is an elder called Liberation. Go to him and ask him how a bodhisattva cultivates the bodhisattva conduct, how a bodhisattva accomplishes the bodhisattva conduct, how a bodhisattva amasses the bodhisattva conduct, and how a bodhisattva considers the bodhisattva conduct. At that time, because of his good knowing advisor, the youth good wealth brought forth deep esteem towards the Dharma of all wisdom, he deeply planted pure faith and profoundly increased his own benefit. Bowing at Megha's feet, he sorrowfully wept. He circumambulated him limitless, measureless times, gazing up at him with longing admiration. He bade farewell and took his leave. 5. Dwelling of endowment with experience. At that time, the youth Good Wealth pondered all Bodhisattva's Dharani door of adornments with the light of unobstructed understanding. He deeply entered all Bodhisattva's door of the seas of languages. He recollected all Bodhisattva's door of knowing, fine and subtle experience for all living beings. He contemplated all Bodhisattva's door of the pure mind. He accomplished all Bodhisattva's door of the light of good roots. He purified and regulated all Bodhisattva's door of teaching and transforming living beings. He understood clearly all Bodhisattva's door of wisdom that gathers in living beings. He solidified all Bodhisattva's door of vast, great determination and inclinations. He abided in and maintained all Bodhisattva's door of supreme determination and inclinations. He purified and regulated all Bodhisattva's door of the various profound faiths and understandings. He pondered all Bodhisattva's door of measureless good intent. His vows became solid, and his mind did not tire. He used all armor as his own adornment. His vigorous, profound intent was irreversible. He became endowed with indestructible faith, which was like Vajra and Narayana, the indestructible ones. He protected and upheld the teachings of all good-knowing advisers. Concerning all states, he obtained indestructible wisdom. He had the universal door of purity. What he practiced was unobstructed. His wisdom light was perfected and universally illumined all things. He was replete with the light of uniting and holding of all the grounds. He completely knew all the various differences in the Dharma realm. He had no relying and no dwelling. He was level, equal, and non-dual. His self-nature was purified. He was adorned in all respects. In all conduct, he attained the ultimate. His wisdom was pure, and he had left behind all attachments. He knew the various dharmas of the 10 directions, and his wisdom was without obstruction. He traveled to the various places in the 10 directions, his body not tiring. He had clear understanding of all the different karmas of the 10 directions. There was not a single Buddha of the 10 directions whom he did not see appear before him. He could deeply enter all the different time periods of the 10 directions. Pure and wonderful Dharma filled his heart. The samadhi of universal wisdom clearly illumined his mind. His mind constantly and universally entered the state of level equality. He was touched by the illumination of the thus come one's wisdom. The flow of all wisdom continued without interruption. In neither his body nor mind did he ever separate from Buddha Dharmas. He was aided by the spiritual powers of all Buddhas. He was illumined by the light of all thus come ones. He accomplished great vows. His vow bodies everywhere pervaded all nets of Kshatriyas. All Dhamma realms universally entered his body. He progressively traveled for a period of 12 years until he arrived at the city, grove of dwelling. He sought everywhere for the elder liberation. After he beheld him, he prostrated himself with his 5 limbs to the ground, stood up, put his palms together, and said, Sagely One, now that I come face to face with a good knowing adviser, I obtain vast and great good benefits. Why is this? It is difficult to see a good knowing advisor. It is difficult to get to hear him. It is difficult to get to have him appear. It is difficult to get to serve him. It is difficult to get to draw near to him. It is difficult to welcome and accept him. It is difficult to encounter him. It is difficult to dwell together with him. It is difficult to please him. It is difficult to follow him. Now I've met you and obtained good benefits. Sagely one, I've already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, for the sake of serving all Buddhas, for the sake of meeting all Buddhas, for the sake of seeing all Buddhas, for the sake of contemplating all Buddhas, for the sake of knowing all Buddhas, for the sake of being certified to sameness with all Buddhas, for the sake of bringing forth the great vows of all Buddhas, for the sake of fulfilling the great vows of all Buddhas, for the sake of being endowed with the wisdom light of all Buddhas, for the sake of accomplishing the multitude of conducts of all Buddhas, for the sake of attaining the spiritual penetrations of all Buddhas, for the sake of being endowed with all the powers of all Buddhas, for the sake of acquiring the fearlessnesses of all Buddhas, for the sake of hearing all Buddha Dharmas, for the sake of receiving all Buddha Dharmas, for the sake of upholding all Buddha Dharmas, for the sake of understanding all Buddha Dharmas, for the sake of protecting all Buddha Dharmas, for the sake of being one substance with all the multitudes of bodhisattvas, for the sake of having good roots, which are no different from those of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of perfecting the paramitas of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of accomplishing the conduct which all bodhisattvas cultivate, for the sake of giving rise to the pure vows of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of attaining the treasury of awesome spirituality of all Buddhas and bodhisattvas, for the sake of attaining the infinite great light of wisdom of the Dharma treasury of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of attaining the vast great treasury of samadhi of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of accomplishing the treasury of limitless and countless spiritual penetrations of all bodhisattvas, for the sake of using the treasury of great compassion to teach, transform, tame, and subdue all living beings so they reach to the ultimate limit, for the sake of manifesting the treasury of spiritual transformations, for the sake of completely using my own mind to attain sovereignty within the treasury of all sovereignties, for the sake of entering the treasury of purity and using all marks as adornments. Sagely one, I now with such thoughts, such intentions, such inclinations, such wishes, such aspirations, such considerations, such venerations, such expedience, such ultimacies, such humility, come to the place of the Sagely One. I've heard that the Sagely One is skilled at guiding and teaching the multitudes of bodhisattvas, that you can use expedience to express and clarify your attainments, that you show them the way, that you act as a bridge for them, that you transmit to them this Dharma door, that you cause them to get rid of their obstructions of confusion and inversion, that you pluck out the arrow of indecision, that you chop through the net of doubts and delusions, that you illuminate the dense thicket of their minds, that you wash away their minds' filth and turbidities, that you cause their minds to be pure and white, that you cause their minds to be clear and cool, that you rectify the flattery and crookedness in their minds, that you cut off their minds subject to birth and death, that you stop the unwholesomeness of their minds, that you untie their minds from attachments, that you free their minds from places of attachments, that you cause their minds to turn away from places defiling with love, that you cause them to quickly enter the states of all wisdom, that you cause them to swiftly arrive at the city of unsurpassed Dharma, that you cause them to dwell in great compassion, that you cause them to dwell in great kindness, that you cause them to enter the bodhisattva conduct, that you cause them to cultivate the doors of samadhi, that you cause them to enter certification to the positions, that you cause them to contemplate the Dharma nature, that you cause them to increase in their power, that you cause them to cultivate practices, so that universally, with regard to everything, their minds will be level and equal. I only hope that the Sagely One will proclaim for me how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct, how he cultivates the bodhisattva path, and how, according to that which he practices, he swiftly attains to purity and quickly comes to understand. At that time, the elder liberation, because of the power of his good roots from the past, the awesome spiritual power of the Buddhas, and the power from the recollection of Dharma Prince Manjusri, entered the Bodhisattva's Samadhi door, which is called the boundlessly revolving Dharani of universally gathering in all Buddha Kshatriyas. Upon entering this Samadhi, he attained a clear, pure body. Within his body there manifested Buddhas of each of the 10 directions, many as dust motes within 10 Buddha Kshatriyas, as well as those Buddhas' countries and their assemblies in their way places, their various kinds of lights and all the events of adornments. There also manifested the spiritual penetrations and transformations that these Buddhas practiced in the past, all of their great vows, their dharmas that aid the way, all of their practices of escape, their purifications and adornments. There were also seen all Buddhas accomplishing equal and proper enlightenment, turning the wonderful Dharma wheel, and teaching and transforming all living beings. All such states were completely manifested in his body, without any impeding obstructions. Their various shapes and marks, and their various successive orders stayed as they originally were, and were not jumbled with each other. Their various countries, their various assemblies, their various way places, their various adornments and ornamentations, within them all the Buddhas were manifesting various spiritual powers, establishing various vehicles and paths, and displaying various vow doors. Perhaps by dwelling in the Tushita heaven, in one world system, they were performing the work of a Buddha, or perhaps they were performing the work of a Buddha by descending from the Tushita palace within one world. In the same way, perhaps by dwelling in the womb, or by being born, or by dwelling in the palace, or by living the home life, or by going to the way places, or by smashing the demon armies, or by being reverently surrounded by gods and dragons, or by being earnestly requested to speak Dharma by all worldly rulers, or by turning the Dharma wheel, or by entering the parinirvana, or by their sharira being distributed, or by stupas and temples being erected for them. In the midst of all living beings, all these thus come once manifest in the various assemblies, in the various worlds, in the various destinies, having various families and clans, having various desires and delights, having various karma and conducts, having various languages, having various faculties and natures, having various afflictions, having the habit of slumber. They might dwell in a minute and tiny way place, or they might dwell in a vast great way place, or they might dwell in a way place the measure of 1 yojana, or they might dwell in a way place the measure of 10 yojanas, or they might dwell in a way place the measure of yojanas, as many as dust motes in ineffably ineffable Buddha Kshatriyas. They were employing various spiritual penetrations, various languages, various sounds, various Dharma doors, various doors of uniting and holding, and various doors of eloquence. They were employing various seas of the noble truths and the various fearlessnesses of the great lion's roar. They were speaking of all living beings' various good roots, their various recollections and intents. They were bestowing various bodhisattva predictions. They were speaking all the various Buddha dharmas. Everything that those thus come ones said could be completely heard and received by the youth good wealth. He could also witness the inconceivable samadhis and spiritual transformations of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the elder liberation arose from samadhi and said to youth good wealth, "Good man, I've entered and come out of the thus come one's door of liberation of unobstructed adornments. Good man, when I enter into and come out of this liberation door, I see the eastern direction's Jambunada gold-light world, with dragon self-mastery king thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and Vairochana treasury bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the southern direction's rapid power world, with universal fragrance thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and Mind King Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the western direction's fragrant light world, with Sumeru Lamb King thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, an unobstructed mind, Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the northern direction's Kashaya banner world, with indestructible Vajra thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and courageous advanced Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the northeastern direction's all superior and wonderful jewels world, with a state of no attainment I thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and no attainment skilled at transformation Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the southeastern direction's fragrant flaming light sound world, with fragrant lamb thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and Vajra blazing wisdom Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the southwestern direction's wisdom sun universal light world, with Dharma realm will banner thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and manifesting all transformations banner, Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the northwestern direction's universal purity world, with all Buddha's jeweled, lofty, and victorious banner thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and Dharma banner king Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the direction above, infinite succession of Buddha's world, with perfect banner of boundless wisdom light thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and Dharma realm doors banner king Bodhisattva, acting as the leader. I also see the direction below, Buddha light lamb, With unobstructed wisdom banner thus come one worthy of offerings, of proper and equal enlightenment, surrounded by the assembly in his way place, and all Buddhist Kshatriyas banner King Bodhisattva acting as the leader. Good men, I see each of the 10 directions thus come once, as those who are many as dust motes in 10 Buddha Kshatriyas, that all of those thus come once, neither come to where I am, nor do I go to them. If I wish to see Amitabha thus come one in the world of happiness, then as soon as I formulate the intention to see him, if I wish to see Vajra light thus come one of the Chandana world, or precious light thus come one of wonderful fragrance world, or jeweled lotus flower light thus come one of the lotus world, or still quiet light thus come one of wonderful golden world, or unmoving thus come one of wonderful bliss world, or lion thus come one of good dwelling world, or moon enlightenment thus come one of mirror brightness world, or Varuchana thus come one of jeweled lion adornment world, I can immediately see all of these Buddhas, and yet these Buddhas do not come here, nor do I go to them. I know that all Buddhas and my own mind are completely like a dream. I know that all Buddhas are like an image or reflection, that my own mind is like water. I know that all the physical characteristics of all Buddhas together with my own mind are both like an illusion. I know that all Buddhas together with my own mind are like an echo. I realize this as such and recollect and consider this as such, that all Buddhas I see arise from my own mind. Good men, you should know that the Bodhisattvas cultivate all Buddha Dharmas. They purify all Buddha Kshatriyas. They accumulate wonderful conduct. They tame and subdue living beings. They bring forth great vows. They enter the door of all wisdom. They playfully roam with self-mastery, the door of inconceivable liberation. They attain the Buddha's bodhi. They manifest great spiritual penetrations. They pervasively travel to all the Dharma realms of the 10 directions. With subtle and fine wisdom, they universally enter all kalpas. All of them completely come from my own mind. Therefore, good men, you should use good dharmas to support and aid your own mind. You should use the water of Dharma to moisten your own mind. You should, with regard to states, purify and regulate your own mind. You should use vigor to make firm your own mind. You should use patience to open up and broaden your own mind. You should use certification to wisdom to cleanse your own mind. You should use wisdom to brighten and sharpen your own mind. You should use the Buddha's self-mastery and ease to open and disclose your own mind. You should use the Buddha's level equality to extend and enlarge your own mind. You should use the Buddha's 10 powers to illumine and observe your own mind. Good men, I'm only able to enter into and come out of this liberation door of unobstructed adornment of thus come once. But as to how all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas attain unobstructed wisdom, how they dwell in unobstructed conduct, how they can always see all of the Buddha's samadhis, how they obtain the samadhi of non-dwelling in the limit of nirvana, how they understand and penetrate the state of universal door samadhi, how they are totally level and equal with regard to the dharmas of the 3 periods of time, how they can skillfully send out division bodies that pervades all kshatriyas, how they dwell in all Buddha state of level equality, how they can see the states of the 10 directions all manifest before them, how their contemplation through wisdom is clear about everything without exception, how they, within their bodies completely manifest the formation and decay of all worlds, how they do not give rise to the thought of duality toward their own bodies and all worlds. How can I possibly know or speak of such wonderful conduct? Good men, south of here at the boundary of Jambudvipa is a country called Milasparana, where there is a bhikshu named Sea Banner. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how a bodhisattva cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, the youth Good Wealth prostrated himself at the feet of the elder Liberation and circumambulated him to the right. He regarded him and extolled with praises. He pondered him with longing admiration and wept sorrowfully. He single-mindedly recollected how he should rely upon the good knowing adviser, how he should attend upon the good knowing adviser, how he should revere the good knowing adviser, how from the good knowing adviser he could behold all wisdom, how toward the good knowing adviser he should never be in opposition or rebellious, how towards the good knowing adviser he should not have any thoughts of flattery or deceit, how towards the good knowing adviser his heart should always be in accord, how he should regard the good knowing adviser as a kind mother, so as to renounce and separate from all unbeneficial dharmas, how he should regard the good knowing adviser as a compassionate father, so as to give rise to all good dharmas. He then bade farewell and took his leave. 6. Dwelling of rectification of the mind. At that time, the youth Good Wealth, with a single mind, properly recollected the teachings of that elder. He contemplated the instructions of that elder. He recollected that inconceivable bodhisattva door of liberation. He pondered that inconceivable bodhisattva wisdom light. He deeply entered that inconceivable gateway of universal entry of bodhisattva. He clearly saw those inconceivable spiritual transformations of the Askam ones. He understood completely that inconceivable universal entry into Buddha Kshatriyas. He distinguished that inconceivable adornment by the powers of the Buddhas. He contemplated those inconceivable states and separate positions of samadhis and liberation. He understood that inconceivable ultimate non-obstruction of different worlds. He cultivated those inconceivable, solid and profound minds of a bodhisattva. He brought forth that inconceivable, pure karma of great vows by a bodhisattva. He gradually proceeded south until he came to the village of Milasparana on the border of Jambudvipa. He sought everywhere for the bhikshu Sea Banner. Then he saw that bhikshu, seated by the roadside in full lotus. He had entered samadhi. He had ceased inhaling and exhaling, and he entertained no extraneous thoughts or awareness. His body was calm and unmoving. From the soles of his feet there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of multitudes of elders, lay people, and Brahmans. They all used various exquisite articles to adorn their bodies. Each of them donned a jeweled headdress. On their crowns was fastened a luminescent pearl. They pervasively traveled to all worlds of the 10 directions. They ring down all kinds of gems, all kinds of beads and necklaces, all kinds of garments, all kinds of food and drink, which were imbued with superior flavor, that is according to the Dharma, all kinds of flowers, all kinds of garlands, all kinds of fragrances, all kinds of paste incense, all kinds of delightful objects of provision. In all places they saved and gathered in all poor and destitute living beings. They comforted all distraught and afflicted living beings, and caused them to be happy, with their minds and intentions purified so they could accomplish the unsurpassed path of Bodhi. From both of his knees there issued countless hundreds of thousands of millions of multitudes of Kshatriyas and Brahmans. They were all wise and clever. Their various physical characteristics, their various features, and their various garments were all superior, wonderful, and adorned. They pervaded all worlds of the 10 directions, and with kind words and like work, they gathered in all living beings. Specifically, they enabled the poor to become well endowed. They enabled the ill to become well. They enabled those in peril to become secure. They enabled the terrified to become soothed. They enabled the worried and suffering to all become happy. Moreover, they used expedient means to exhort and guide them, causing them all to leave that which is evil and to dwell securely within good dharmas. From his waist there issued forth countless immortals, equal to the number of living beings. Some were dressed in garments made of grass, some in garments made of tree bark. Each of them held a bottle for purification. They had a still and awesome compartment. They revolved about, traveling back and forth in the worlds of the 10 directions. Within empty space, they used a Buddha's wondrous sound to praise the thus come ones. They proclaimed all dharmas. Perhaps they spoke of the path of pure Brahma practices, thereby causing beings to cultivate, practice, tame, and subdue all of their faculties. Perhaps they proclaimed that all dharmas are without a self-nature, thereby causing them to contemplate this and to bring forth wisdom. Perhaps they spoke of the languages, discourses, and theories of the world, regulations and rules, or perhaps they gave instructions on the wisdom of all wisdoms and the expedients essential for escape, thereby causing each of them to follow the right sequence in cultivating their karma. From his 2 ribs there issued forth inconceivable dragons and inconceivable dragon maidens, who manifested all dragons' inconceivable spiritual transformations. That is, they rained down inconceivable clouds of incense, inconceivable clouds of flowers, inconceivable clouds of garlands, inconceivable clouds of jeweled canopies, inconceivable clouds of jeweled streamers, inconceivable clouds of wonderful jeweled objects of adornments, inconceivable clouds of money jewels, inconceivable clouds of jeweled necklaces, inconceivable clouds of jeweled thrones, inconceivable clouds of jeweled palaces, inconceivable clouds of jeweled lotus flowers, inconceivable clouds of jeweled crowns, inconceivable clouds of God's bodies, and inconceivable clouds of heavenly maidens, all of which pervaded empty space as adornments. They filled up the way places of all Buddhas of the worlds of the 10 directions as offerings, and caused all living beings to become happy. From the swastika character on his chest, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of Asura kings. All of them manifested inconceivable powers of illusion and self-mastery, which caused immense quaking. Within 100 worlds, all the waters of the sea spontaneously bubbled and seethed. All kings of mountains crashed and clanged against one another. Not a single heavenly palace failed to shake. Not a single demon's light was not obliterated. Not a single demon army was not smashed and subdued. They universally caused all living beings to renounce their thoughts of arrogance, to destroy their thoughts of anger and harming, to smash their mountains of afflictions, to put to rest all their evil dharmas, so they would always be without contention and debate, and forever be harmonious and good to each other. Moreover, with the power of illusion, they enlightened living beings. They caused them to eradicate their evil offenses. They caused them to become terrified of birth and death. They caused them to escape from all the destinies. They caused them to be apart from defilement and attachment. They caused them to dwell in the mind of unsurpassed Bodhi. They caused them to cultivate all of the Bodhisattva's conduct. They caused them to dwell in all of the paramitas. They caused them to enter all of the grounds of a Bodhisattva. They caused them to contemplate all of the subtle and wonderful Dharma doors. They caused them to know of all the experience of all Buddhas. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From his back, for the sake of those who should be crossed over by the two vehicles, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of sound hearers and solitarily enlightened ones. For those who were attached to self, they spoke of there being no self. For those who were attached to permanence, they proclaimed that all activities are impermanent. For those who conducted themselves based on greed, they spoke the contemplations of impurity. For those who conducted themselves based on anger, they spoke of the contemplation of the mind of compassion. For those who conducted themselves based on stupidity, they spoke the contemplation of arisal from conditions. For those who conducted themselves based on equal share of all of these, they spoke the Dharma of the state of responding with wisdom. For those who were fond of attaching to states, they spoke the Dharma of there being nothing at all. For those who were fond of attaching to locations of still quietness, they spoke the Dharma of bringing forth great vows, so as to universally benefit all living beings. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From his two shoulders, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of yakshas and raksasa kings, all of their different shapes and features, their different forms and appearances, whether long or short, were all horrifying. They were surrounded by limitless retinues who protected all the living beings who practiced good, and the assemblies of all worthy sages and bodhisattvas. Before those who were inclined toward the proper dwelling, or those who were already within proper dwelling, they sometimes would manifest as Vajra-wielding spirits and protect and guard all of the Buddhas and Buddha's dwellings. Or they sometimes pervasively protected all worlds. They caused those who had terror and fear to become peaceful and secure. They caused those who had sickness to get rid of their sickness. They caused those who were suffering and afflicted to be relieved and freed. They caused those who had evil offenses to become disgusted and to repent. They caused those who had met with disasters and unexpected calamities to be rid of them. In such ways, they benefited living beings, enabling them to renounce the wheel of birth and death and to turn the wheel of proper Dharma. From his stomach, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of Kinara kings, each of whom was circumambulated by immeasurable Kinara maidens. Moreover, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of Gandharva kings, who were circumambulated all around by Gandharva maidens. Each of them played countless hundreds of thousands of kinds of heavenly music. They made songs, chants, and praises about the actual nature of all dharmas. They made songs, chants, and praises about all Buddhas. They made songs, chants, and praises about bringing forth the Bodhi resolve. They made songs, chants, and praises about the cultivation of the Bodhisattva conduct. They made songs, chants, and praises about the door of all Buddhas realizing proper enlightenment. They made songs, chants, and praises about the door of all Buddhas turning the Dharma wheel. They made songs, chants, and praises about the door of all Buddhas manifesting spiritual transformations. They disclosed and proclaimed the door of all Buddhas parinirvana. They disclosed and proclaimed the door of all the Buddha's teachings. They disclosed and proclaimed the door of causing all living beings to become happy. They disclosed and proclaimed the door of adorning and purifying all Buddha Kshatriyas. They instructed and proclaimed the door of revealing all subtle and wonderful dharmas. They instructed and proclaimed the door of renouncing and leaving behind all obstructions which arise from afflictions. They instructed and proclaimed the door of bringing forth all good roots. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm of the 10 directions. From his face there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands or millions of wheel-turning sage kings. They were replete with the 7 jewels and were circumambulated by the 4 armies. They emitted the light of great giving and rained down measureless treasures, causing all poor and destitute beings to become fulfilled and content. They caused them to forever cut off the practice of taking what is not given to them. Countless hundreds of thousands of heavenly maidens, their features upright and proper, were all given away with an unattached mind. They caused them to forever cut off the practice of sexual misconduct. They caused them to give rise to the mind of kindness and not to sever the life of others. They caused them to always be absolutely true in their speech and not to engage in false, deceitful, and unbeneficial chatter. They caused them to speak of gathering in and not to practice divisiveness. They caused them to use gentle and compliant speech, which was without any coarseness or harshness. They caused them to always proclaim the most profound, decisive, and clear meaning, and not to use meaningless, frivolous, or contrived language. They spoke to them of having few desires, causing them to be rid of greed and love, so that their minds would be without blemish or fault. They spoke to them of great compassion, causing them to dispel their indignation and rage, so that their minds would attain purity. They spoke for them the actual meaning, causing them to contemplate all dharmas and to enter profoundly causal conditions and become skilled at understanding the principle of truth. They pulled out the thorn of deviant views. They smashed the mountain of doubt and delusion, and they completely vanquished all obstructions. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From his 2 eyes there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of sun discs, which universally illuminated all those in the great hells and other evil destinies, causing them to separate from suffering. They also illumined within all worlds, causing them to be rid of darkness. They also illumine all the living beings of the 10 directions, causing them to remove and be free of the obstructive cataract of stupidity. In countries of filth and turbidity, they emitted light of purity. In countries of white silver, they emitted light the color of yellow gold. In countries of yellow gold, they emitted light the color of white silver. In countries of Vaidurya, they emitted light the color of crystal. In countries of crystal, they emitted light the color of Vaidurya. In countries of lapis lazuli, they emitted light the color of carnelian. In countries of carnelian, they emitted light the color of lapis lazuli. In countries of imperial blue, they emitted light the color of Sun Treasury Money King. In countries of Sun Treasury Money King, they emitted light the color of imperial blue. In countries of red pearls, they emitted light the color of Moonlight Net Treasury Money King. In countries of Moonlight Net Treasury Money King, they emitted light the color of red pearls. In countries that were formed from a single gem, they emitted light in the color of many gems. In countries formed of many gems, they emitted light the color of one single gem. They illumine the dense forest within the minds of living beings. They perform the measureless deeds of all living beings. They adorned and ornamented the states of all worlds. They caused the minds of all living beings to obtain clear coolness and to be greatly happy. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From the white hair mark between his brows, there issued forth hundreds of thousands of millions of Lord Chakras, who toward states had all gained sovereignty. A money pearl was fastened on each of their crowns, and its light illumined all the heavenly palaces. It quaked all the Sumerus, kings of mountains. It awakened all the great heavenly assemblies. It extolled the power of blessings and virtue. It proclaimed the power of wisdom. It brought forth their power of joy. It upheld the power of their determination. It purified the power of their mindfulness. It solidified the power of their Bodhi resolve. It praised the joy of seeing the Buddhas, thus causing them to expel worldly desires. It praised the joy of hearing Dharma, thus causing them to be weary of the states of the world. It praised the joy of contemplating wisdom, thus causing them to terminate their worldly defilements. It stopped the warring of the Asuras. It cut off contention and affliction. It destroyed the mind that fears death. It brought forth the vow to conquer all demons. It established the Sumeru, king of mountains, of the proper Dharma. It accomplished all the deeds and affairs of living beings. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From his forehead there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands or millions of Brahma gods. Their forms and appearances were upright and adorned. Nothing in the world could compare with them. Their awesome comportment was still and quiet. Their words and sounds were fine and wonderful. They exhorted the Buddha to speak Dharma. They praised the Buddha's merit and virtue. They caused all bodhisattvas to bring forth happiness. They could perform the measureless deeds of all living beings. They universally pervaded the worlds of the 10 directions. From his head there issued forth bodhisattva assemblies, as many as the dust motes in limitless Buddha Kshatriyas. All of their bodies were adorned with fine characteristics. They emitted boundless light. They spoke of various conducts. Specifically, they praised the practice of giving, thereby causing living beings to renounce their stinginess and greed, and to obtain worlds adorned with various wonderful jewels. They praised the merit and virtue of holding precepts, thereby causing living beings to forever cut off all evil and to dwell in the precepts of kindness and compassion of a bodhisattva. They spoke of how all existences are all like a dream. They spoke of how all desires and delights are without flavor, thereby causing living beings to separate from the fetters of affliction. They spoke of the power of patience under insult, thus causing their minds to obtain self-mastery with regard to all dharmas. They extolled the golden-hued body, thereby causing living beings to separate from the filth of anger and hatred, to give rise to the practices of regulating and to cut off the path of the animals. They praised the practice of vigor, thereby causing beings to leave worldly indulgences and laxness far behind, and all diligently cultivate limitless wonderful dharmas. They also praised for them the paramita of dhyana, thereby causing all their minds to obtain comfort. They also proclaim the paramita of prajna, revealing and instructing them in proper views, thereby causing living beings to delight in the wisdom of self-mastery and to pull out all poisonous views. They also spoke of various different ways of acting in accordance with the world, thereby causing living beings, although free from birth and death, to still take rebirth with comfort in the various destinies. They also manifested spiritual penetrations and transformations and spoke of self-mastery over one's lifespan, thereby causing living beings to bring forth great vows. They also spoke to them of the accomplishment of the power of Dharani, the power of bringing forth great vows, the power of the purifying and regulating through samadhi, the power of receiving rebirth with self-mastery. They also proclaimed all the various modes of wisdom, that is, the wisdom of universally knowing all the faculties of living beings, the wisdom of universally knowing the activities of all minds, the wisdom of universally knowing the thus come one's 10 powers, the wisdom of universally knowing the sovereignty of all Buddhas. In such a way, what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. From his summit, there issued forth countless hundreds of thousands of millions of bodies of thus come ones. Their bodies were peerless. All the fine marks, minor characteristics were pure and adorned. Their awesome radiance was brilliant and dazzling, like a mountain of true gold. Their limitless light universally illumined the 10 directions. They emitted wondrous sounds that filled the Dharma realm. They manifested the power of limitless great spiritual penetrations and universally let fall Dharma rain on all worlds. That is, for the bodhisattvas who were seated in the Bodhi way place, they let fall the Dharma rain of universal knowledge, of level equality. For bodhisattvas on the position of anointing the crown, they let fall the Dharma rain of entrance into the door of universality. For bodhisattvas on the position of Dharma prince, they let fall the Dharma rain of universal adornment. For bodhisattvas on the position of the pure youth, they let fall the Dharma rain of solidity of mountains. For bodhisattvas on the position of non-retreat, they let fall the Dharma rain of sea treasuries. For bodhisattvas who had accomplished the position of rectifying the mind, they let fall the Dharma rain of the states of universality. For bodhisattvas on the position of endowment with skill and means, they let fall the Dharma rain of the door of the self-nature. For bodhisattvas on the position of noble birth, they let fall the Dharma rain of according with the world. For bodhisattvas on the position of cultivation, they let fall the Dharma rain of universal compassion and sympathy. For bodhisattvas who were new in study, they let fall the Dharma rain of the treasury of accumulation. For bodhisattvas who had brought forth the initial resolve, they let fall the Dharma rain of gathering in living beings. For bodhisattvas of faith and understanding, they let fall the Dharma rain of inexhaustible states universally appearing before them. For living beings in the form realm, they let fall the Dharma rain of the door to universality. For Brahma gods, they let fall the Dharma rain of the treasury of universality. For those in the heaven of comfort, they let fall the Dharma rain of producing strength. For demon multitudes, they let fall the Dharma rain of the mind banner. For gods in the transformation of bliss heaven, they let fall the Dharma rain of pure mindfulness. For gods in the Tushita heaven, they let fall the Dharma rain of bringing forth the intent. For gods in the Suyama heaven, they let fall the Dharma rain of happiness. For gods in the Triastimsa heaven, they let fall the Dharma rain of swiftly adorning the realm of empty space. For Yaksha kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of joy. For Gandharva kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of Vajra wheels. For Asura kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of vast states. For Garuda kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of boundless light. For Kinara kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of all supreme worldly wisdoms. For human kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of not delighting in attachments. For the dragon kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of the banner of joy. For Mahoraga kings, they let fall the Dharma rain of great rest. For living beings in the hells, they let fall the Dharma rain of adornment with proper mindfulness. For animals, they let fall the Dharma rain of the treasury of wisdom. For beings in the realm of King Yama, they let fall the Dharma rain of fearlessness. For beings in places of difficulty and disasters, they let fall the Dharma rain of universal peace, thereby causing all of them to enter into the assemblies of worthy sages in such a way what they did pervaded the Dharma realm. Moreover, from each and every hairpaw on the body of the bhikshu's sea banner, there came forth nets of lights, many as the numbers of dustmotes within Asankheyas or Buddha Kshatriyas. Each of these nets of light were replete with Asankheya forms and appearances, Asankheya adornments, Asankheya states, Asankheya deeds, all of which filled up all the Dharma realms of the 10 directions. At that time, the youth Good Wealth single-mindedly contemplated the bhikshu's sea banner and brought forth thirst and admiration. He recollected that samadhi and liberation. He pondered that inconceivable samadhi of a bodhisattva. He pondered that inconceivable sea of experience which benefited living beings. He pondered that inconceivable door of universal adornment, of effortlessness. He pondered that pure wisdom of adorning Dharma realms. He pondered that wisdom of receiving the Buddha's aid. He pondered that bringing forth of the power of self-mastery of a bodhisattva. He pondered that power of solidifying the vast, great vows of a bodhisattva. He pondered that power of increasing and broadening all bodhisattva conduct. In such a way, he stood there, pondering and contemplating, while one day and night transpired, up to and including 7 days and nights, a half month, a whole month, up to and including a full 6 months. And following this another 6 days transpired. After this, the bhikshu's sea banner arose from his samadhi. Then the youth Good Wealth spoke in praise. Sagely one, rare and unique, how most profound this samadhi is, how most vast and extensive this samadhi is, how limitless are the states this samadhi encompass, how inscrutable the spiritual powers of this samadhi are, how peerless the brilliance of this samadhi is, how innumerable the adornments of this samadhi are, how invincible the awesome power of this samadhi is, how level and equal the state of this samadhi is, how universally this samadhi illumines the 10 directions, how infinite the benefit of this samadhi is, because it can eliminate the limitless suffering of all living beings. That is to say, it can cause all living beings to separate from the suffering of poverty, to escape from the hells, and to avoid the realm of animals. It closes the door to all difficulties and opens the path to humans and gods. It causes human beings and gods to rejoice and causes them to delight in the states of dhyana. It can increase the delights of that which is conditioned and can show them the joy of living the conditioned. It can inspire them to bring forth the Bodhi resolve. It can cause them to increase in their conduct of blessings and wisdom. It can increase and develop their mind of great compassion. It can cause them to bring forth the power of great vows. It can enable them to understand the Bodhisattva path. It can cause them to be adorned with ultimate wisdom. It can cause them to tend toward the state of the great vehicle. It can illumine the conduct of universal worthy. It can cause them to certify to the wisdom light of all the grounds of a bodhisattva. It can cause them to accomplish the vows and conduct of all bodhisattvas. It can cause them to dwell securely within the state of the wisdom of all wisdom. Sagely one, what is the name of this samadhi? The Bhikshu Sibana said, Good man, this samadhi is called renunciations and attainments of the universal I. It is also called the pure light of the state of prajna paramita. It is also called the door of universal adornment and purification. Good man, it is due to my cultivation and practice of prajna paramita that I've attained the samadhi of universal adornment and purification, which is equal to millions of asankheyas of samadhis. The youth good wealth then asked, Sagely one, what is the state of this samadhi ultimately like? The Bhikshu Sibana replied, Good man, upon entering this samadhi, one completely understands all worlds without obstruction. One travels to all worlds without obstruction. One transcends all worlds without obstruction. One adorns all worlds without obstruction. One cultivates and regulates all worlds without obstruction. One adorns and purifies all worlds without obstruction. One beholds all Buddhas without obstruction. One contemplates that vast, great, awesome virtue of all Buddhas without obstruction. One knows of the spiritual powers of self-mastery of all Buddhas without obstruction. One certifies to all the vast and mighty powers of all Buddhas without obstruction. One enters the sea of all merit and virtue of all Buddhas without obstruction. One receives the boundless, wonderful dharmas of all Buddhas without obstruction. One enters all Buddha dharmas and cultivates wonderful conduct without obstruction. One certifies to level and equal wisdom with which all Buddhas turn the Dharma wheel without obstruction. One enters the sea of assemblies of way places of all Buddhas without obstruction. One contemplates dharmas of the Buddhas of the 10 directions without obstruction. One uses great compassion to gather in and receive living beings of the 10 directions without obstruction. One always gives rise to great kindness that fills the 10 directions without obstruction. One beholds the Buddhas of the 10 directions with an untiring mind without obstruction. One enters the seas of all living beings without obstruction. One knows the sea of all living beings' faculties without obstruction. One obtains the wisdom to know the differences among living beings' faculties without obstruction. Good man, I only know this single samadhi of the light of prajna paramita. But as to how all bodhisattvas enter the sea of wisdom, how they purify the states of the Dharma realm, how they arrived at all destinies, how they pervade boundless kshetriyas, how they are sovereign in dharani, how their samadhis are purified, how their spiritual penetrations are vast and great, how their eloquence is infinite, how they skillfully speak of the grounds, how they act as a place of reliance for living beings. How could I possibly know of their wonderful conduct or discourse on their merits and virtues, or understand what they practice or comprehend their states, or reach to the end of the power of their vows, or enter their essential doors, or fathom their certification, or speak of their shares in the way, or dwell in their samadhis, or use their states of mind, or obtain the wisdom of level equality that they possessed. Good men, south of here is a hamlet called Sea Tide. There you will find a grove called Universal Adornment. Within that grove, the Upasika Asha dwells. Go to where she is and ask her how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how she cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, in the presence of Bhikshu C. Banner, the youth good wealth obtained a body of durability. He reaped a wealth of wonderful dharmas. He entered into profound states. His wisdom became clear and lucid. His samadhi brightly illumined. He came to dwell in pure liberation. He beheld the most profound dharmas. His mind dwelt securely within all doors of purity. His wisdom light filled the 10 directions. His heart became elated. His joy was boundless. With his 5 limbs he prostrated himself on the ground, making obeisance at his feet. He circumambulated him limitless times, and reverently gazed up at him with longing, admiration. He pondered and contemplated, sighing with adoration and yearning. He held his name. He envisioned his countenance. He recollected his voice. He pondered his samadhi and the state of great vows which he practiced. He received the pure light of his wisdom. Thereupon he bade farewell and took his leave. 7. Dwelling on non-retreat. At that time, the youth good wealth, relying on the strength of the good knowing advisor and depending on the teachings of the good knowing advisor, was mindful of the words of the good knowing advisor. He brought forth deep admiration and delight for his good knowing advisor. As he has this thought, because of the good knowing advisor, I've been led to see the Buddha. Because of the good knowing advisor, I've been led to hear the Dharma. The good advisor is my guide, for he shows to me and guides me in all Buddha Dharmas. The good advisor acts as my eyes, for he enables me to see the Buddhas as being like empty space. The good advisor acts as my bridge, for he enables me to enter the lotus pools of all Buddhas thus come once. He traveled gradually to the south until he arrived at the place Sea Tide. He beheld the garden Universal Adornment. Walls made of multitudes of jewels entirely surrounded it. Trees of all jewels adorned it in symmetric rows. Trees of all jeweled blossoms rained down multitudes of wondrous flowers, which spread over the ground. Trees of all jeweled incenses, their fragrance permeating the atmosphere, universally perfumed the 10 directions. Trees of all jeweled garlands rained down, huge jeweled garlands, which were suspended from all places. Trees of all money gem kings rained down great money gems that spread out everywhere. Trees of all jeweled garments rained down jeweled garments of various colors, and according to what was needed, spread out everywhere. Trees of all music gave off sounds when the wind blew. These sounds were fine and wonderful, and excelled the music of the heavens. Trees of all implements of adornment each rained down precious, rare, and wondrous objects, which spread out everywhere, as decorations. Its ground was clean and pure, without high or low places. In its midst were contained 1,000,000 halls, which were fashioned from great money jewels fitted together. 1,000,000 pavilions were covered over with Jambunada gold. 1,000,000 palaces were adorned with inlaid Vairochana money gems. 10,000 bathing pools, fashioned from multitudes of jewels, were surrounded on all sides by railings of the 7 jewels. Stairways of the 7 jewels fan out to all 4 sides. Water of 8 meritorious virtues was translucent and filled the pools to the brim. The fragrance of its waters was like heavenly chandana. The bottoms of the pools were spread with golden sand, interspersed throughout with precious water-clearing pearls. In the midst of it, geese, ducks, peacocks, cucuta birds frolicked and played, and sang forth harmonious and elegant sounds. Jeweled tala trees extended all around, arranged in rows. Moreover, there were jeweled nets from which golden bells were hung. Swayed by the soft breezes, they constantly emitted wonderful sounds. A huge jeweled canopy was hoisted, surrounded by jeweled trees on all sides. Countless money-gem banners were erected, their lights universally, illumining for a distance of 100,000 yojanas. Moreover, in the midst of it were 1,000,000 ponds, in which silt of black chandana had filtered down and settled on the bottom. Lotuses made of all wonderful jewels blossomed and spread over the water's surface. The colored lights of great money flowers radiated brightness. Moreover, in that garden was a grand palace called Banner of Adornment, the ground of which was paved with wondrous gems of the sea treasury. Vaidurya gems formed its pillars. Jambunada gold covered it over. Brightness treasury money served as adornments. The flaming light from countless kings of gems was dazzling and blazing. Multi-storied towers and interlacing pavilions were festooned with ornaments. Aruna, king of incense, and Enlightenment, king of incense, both emitted wondrous fragrances which permeated everything. Moreover, spread out everywhere within this palace were limitless jeweled lotus flower thrones, specifically illumining the 10 directions money jeweled lotus thrones, Vairochana money jeweled lotus thrones, illuminating the world money jeweled lotus thrones, wonderful treasury money jeweled lotus thrones, lion treasury money jeweled lotus thrones, immaculate treasury money jeweled lotus thrones, universal door money jeweled lotus thrones, brightness adornment money jeweled lotus thrones, securely dwelling in the great sea treasury's purity money king jeweled lotus thrones, and Vajra lion money jeweled lotus thrones. Moreover, in the garden were 1,000,000 varieties of curtains, specifically curtains of garments, curtains of garlands, curtains of incense, curtains of flowers, curtains of branches, curtains of manis, curtains of true gold, curtains of objects of adornment, curtains of music, curtains of spiritual transformations of elephant kings, curtains of spiritual transformations of horse kings, curtains of money gems worn by Lord Chakra. Such as these and others numbered in the millions. There were millions of great jeweled nets that spread out over it, specifically nets of jeweled bells, nets of jeweled canopies, nets of jeweled bodies, nets of the sea treasury's true pearls, nets of violet Vaidurya money gems, nets of lion manis, nets of moonlight manis, nets of multitudes of fragrances in various shapes and images, nets of jeweled crowns, and nets of precious necklaces, such as these and others, numbered in the millions. It was illuminated by 1,000,000 great lights, specifically light of flaming brightness, money gems, light of sun treasury, money gems, light of moon banner, money gems, light of fragrant flaming, money gems, light of supreme treasury, money gems, light of lotus treasury, money gems, light of flaming banner, money gems, light of great lamp, money gems, light of universally illumining the 10 directions, money gems, and light of fragrant brightness, money gems, such as these and others numbered in the millions. There constantly rained down millions of objects of adornments and millions of black chandana incenses which emitted wondrous sounds, millions of pundarika flowers that excelled those of the heavens welled forth and were strewn about, millions of necklaces that excelled those of the heavens acted as adornments, millions of wonderful jeweled garland ribbons that excelled those of the heavens were suspended everywhere. There were millions of multicolored wonderful garments that excelled those of the heavens, and millions of assorted colored money jewels whose light universally illumined. 1,000,000 gods joyously gazed upward and made obeisance. 1,000,000 heavenly maidens leapt down from empty space. 1,000,000 bodhisattvas drew near with veneration, constantly delighting in hearing the Dharma. At that time, the Upasika Asha was seated on a throne of true gold. She wore a crown made of a net of sweet treasury pearls, and from her arms hung jeweled bracelets of true gold that surpassed those of all the heavens. Her violet blue hair streamed down, and a net of great manis adorned her head. Lion moth money jewels served as her earrings, as you will money gem kings made up her necklaces. A net of all jewels covered her body. Hundreds of thousands of millions of nayutas of living beings bowed to her in reverence. From the east, limitless beings came to where she was, specifically from the Brahma heavens, the heaven of Brahma multitudes, the great Brahma heaven, the heaven of ministers of Brahma, the heaven of self-mastery, and so forth, including all humans and non-humans, from the south, west, and north, the 4 intermediate directions above and below. It was also like this. Those who beheld this Upasika had all their illnesses eradicated. They left the filth of afflictions. They extricated the thorn of views. They smashed the mountains of obstructions. They entered the state of unobstructed purity. They increased and brightened all of their good roots. They developed and nurtured all of their faculties. They entered the door of all wisdom. They entered the door of all dharanis, the door of all samadhis, the door of all great vows, the door of all wonderful conduct, and the door of all merit and virtue. All of these appeared before them. Their minds were extensive and great. They were replete with spiritual penetrations. Their bodies became unobstructed and traveled to all places. At that time, the youth good wealth entered the garden universal adornment and contemplated it thoroughly. He beheld the Upasika Asha seated on her wonderful throne. Going to where she was, he made obeisance at her feet. He circumambulated her countless times and said, "Sagely one, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I still do not know how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. I heard that the Sagely One is skilled at guiding and teaching. I wish you would speak them for me." Asha replied, "Good man, I've attained only a single door of liberation of a bodhisattva. If there are those who see, hear, or mindfully recollect me, or dwell with me, or make offerings to me, none of their efforts will be in vain. Good men, if they are living beings who have not planted good roots, who have not been gathered in by good friends, who are not protected or remembered by all the Buddhas, such people will never be able to see me. Good men, if they are living beings who get to see me, they will obtain irreversibility from Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Good men, all the Buddhas of the East constantly come to this place and seated on jeweled thrones speak Dharma for me. All the Buddhas from the south, west, north, the four intermediate directions above and below, also came to this place and seated on jeweled thrones speak Dharma for me. Good men, I am never apart from seeing the Buddhas and hearing the Dharma, and I dwell together with all bodhisattvas. Good men, this great assembly of mine numbers 84 thousands of millions of Nayutas, all who, in this garden, practice together with me, have attained irreversibility from Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. All the rest of the living beings who live in this garden have also universally entered the position of irreversibility. Good Wealth then said, Sagely One, have you brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi for a very long time? She answered, Good men, I remember in the past how at the place of Burning Lamp Buddha I cultivated Brahma conduct, respectfully made offerings, heard the Dharma, receiving and upholding it. Prior to that, at the place of Living Filth Buddha, I left the home life and studied the way, receiving and maintaining the proper Dharma. Prior to that, I was at the place of Wonderful Banner Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Victorious Sumeru Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Lotus Flower Virtuous Treasury Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Vairocana Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Universal I Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Pure Long Life Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of Vajra Navel Buddha. Prior to that, I was at the place of God Varuna Buddha. Good men, I remember from the past throughout measureless kalpas, in measureless lifetimes, being successively at the places of Buddhas, to the number of sand grains in 36 Ganges rivers, I served, respected, and revered them, and made offerings to them. I heard the Dharma, received and upheld it, and purely cultivated Brahma practices. But what is known by the wisdom of all those past Buddhas is not something that I can fathom. Good men, the initial resolve of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it pervades all Dharma realms. The door of great compassion of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it universally enters all worlds. The door of great vows of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it ultimately pervades the 10 directions Dharma realms. The door of great kindness of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it universally shelters all living beings. The conduct and cultivation of a bodhisattva are without measure, as they are practiced in all kshatriyas throughout all kalpas. The power of samadhi of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it brings about non-retreat from the bodhisattva path. The power of uniting and upholding of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it can uphold all worlds. The power of the wisdom light of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it can universally certify to entry to the 3 periods of time. The power of spiritual penetrations of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it can universally manifest the nets of all kshatriyas. The power of eloquence of a bodhisattva is without measure, as its one sound can be understood by all. The pure body of a bodhisattva is without measure, as it pervades all Buddha Kshatriyas. The youth could well said, "Sagely one, you should have obtained Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi long ago." She answered, "Good man, it is not for the sake of teaching, transforming, and subduing one single living being that a bodhisattva brings forth the Bodhi resolve, nor is it for the sake of teaching, transforming, and subduing 100 living beings that a bodhisattva brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of teaching, transforming, and subduing an ineffable number of living beings that a bodhisattva brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of teaching and transforming living beings within one world that he brings forth the Bodhi resolved, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of teaching and transforming living beings in ineffable numbers of worlds that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of teaching and transforming living beings in worlds as many as dust motes within Jambudvipa that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of teaching and transforming living beings in worlds as many as dust motes within a trichilocosm he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of teaching and transforming living beings in worlds as many as dust motes in ineffable numbers of trichilocosms that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of making offerings to one Tathagata he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of making offerings to an ineffable number of Tathagatas that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of making offerings to Tathagatas who appear in succession within one world that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of making offerings to Tathagatas who appear in succession within an ineffable number of worlds that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of making offerings to Tathagatas who appear in succession within worlds as many as dust motes in one trichilocosm that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of making offerings to Tathagatas who appear in succession in worlds as many as dust motes in ineffable number of Buddha Kshatriyas that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of adorning and purifying one world system that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of adorning and purifying an ineffable number of worlds that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of adorning and purifying worlds as many as dust motes within one trichilocosm that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of adorning and purifying worlds as many as dust motes within an ineffable number of trichilocosms that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of making dwelling and maintaining the Dharma heritage of one Tathagata that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to it is not for the sake of making dwelling and maintaining the Dharma heritage of ineffable number of Tathagatas that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is not for the sake of making dwelling and maintaining the Dharma heritage of Tathagatas in worlds as many as dust motes within one Jambudvipa that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve, and so forth up to It is not for the sake of making dwell and maintaining the Dharma heritage of Tathagatas in worlds as many as dust motes within an ineffable numbers of Buddha Kshatriyas that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. To speak of it in general terms, it is not for the sake of fulfilling the vows of one Buddha, not for the sake of dwelling in one Buddha country, not for the sake of entering one Buddha's assembly, not for the sake of upholding the Dharma eye of one Buddha, not for the sake of turning the Dharma wheel of one Buddha, not for the sake of knowing the successive order of all kalpas within one world, not for the sake of knowing the sea of the mind of one living being, not for the sake of knowing the sea of faculties of one living being, not for the sake of knowing the sea of karma of one living being, not for the sake of knowing the sea of conduct of one living being, not for the sake of knowing the sea of afflictions of one living being, not for the sake of knowing the sea of afflicted habits of one living being, and so forth up to, it is not for the sake of knowing the sea of afflicted habits of living beings, as many as dust motes in an ineffable numbers of Buddha Kshatriyas, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to teach, transform, tame, and subdue absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to serve and make offerings to absolutely all Buddhas without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to adorn and purify all Buddha lands without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to protect and uphold the proper teaching of absolutely all Buddhas without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to perfect the vows of absolutely all Tathagatas without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to travel to absolutely all Buddha lands without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to enter the assemblies of absolutely all Buddhas without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to know the successive order of all kalpas within absolutely all worlds without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to know the seas of minds of absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to know the seas of faculties of absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to know the seas of karma of absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to know the seas of conduct of absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to destroy the seas of afflictions of absolutely all living beings without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. It is because he wishes to pull them out of the seas of absolutely all afflictions and bad habits without exception, that he brings forth the Bodhi resolve. Good men, to speak of the essential points, with the above billions of asankheyas of expedient practices, a bodhisattva brings forth the Bodhi resolve. Good men, a bodhisattva practices universal entry into all dharmas, for he certifies to attainment of them all. He universally enters all kshatriyas, for he adorns and purifies them all. Therefore, good men, not until all the worlds are adorned and purified will my vows be exhausted, not until I have exhaustively pulled out the afflictions and bad habits of all living beings, will my vows be fulfilled? Good Wealth asked, Sagely One, what is the name of this liberation? She answered, Good man, this liberation is called banner of security apart from worry. Good man, I only know the single door of liberation. As to all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, their minds are like the sea, in that they can completely contain and receive all Buddha dharmas. They are like Mount Sumeru, in that they possess solid will and intent, which cannot be moved. They are like the medicine good view, in that they can eradicate the severe illness of afflictions of living beings. They are like the bright, pure sun, in that they can break through the dark obstructions of living beings' ignorance. They are like the great earth, in that they can act as a place of reliance for all living beings. They are like a good breeze, in that they can benefit all living beings. They are like a bright lamp, in that they can produce the light of wisdom for living beings. They are like a great cloud, in that they can rain down the Dharma of still extinction for living beings. They are like the pure moon, in that they can emit the light of blessings and virtue for living beings. They are like Lord Chakra, in that they can protect and guard all living beings. How could I possibly know or speak of such conduct of merit and virtue? Good man, to the south of this place, sea-tide, there is a country called Nalayur. Within it is a rishi called Bhishmotara Nirgosha. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at her feet and circumambulated her countless times. He gazed up at her with longing admiration and sorrowfully wept. He reflected in this way: to obtain Bodhi is difficult. To draw near a good knowing advisor is difficult. To encounter a good knowing advisor is difficult. To obtain the faculties of a bodhisattva is difficult. To purify the faculties of a bodhisattva is difficult. To encounter good advisors who cultivate conduct similar to one's own is difficult. To contemplate according to principle is difficult. To cultivate relying on the teaching is difficult. To happen upon expedient devices that give rise to a mind of goodness is difficult. To happen upon the Dharma light that increases all wisdom is difficult. After entertaining these reflections, the youth Good Wealth bade farewell and took his leave. At that time, the youth Good Wealth accordingly reflected upon the Bodhisattva's proper teachings. He accordingly reflected upon the Bodhisattva's pure conduct. He brought forth a mind of increase in the power of a Bodhisattva's blessings. He brought forth a mind of clearly seeing all Buddhas. He brought forth a mind of giving rise to all Buddhas. He brought forth a mind of increasing and developing all great vows. He brought forth a mind of universally seeing the dharmas of the 10 directions. He brought forth a mind of clearly illumining the actual nature of all dharmas. He brought forth a mind of universally dispelling all obstructions. He brought forth a mind of contemplating the Dharma realm as devoid of darkness. He brought forth a mind of jeweled adornment of pure intent. He brought forth a mind of conquering and subduing all demons. He gradually traveled to the country of Nalayur and searched everywhere for Bhishmotara Nirgosha. He saw a great forest which was adorned with asankheyas of trees. Specifically, various leafy trees branched out with lush foliage. Various flowering trees blossomed with luxuriant and fresh flowers. Various fruit trees ripened in close succession. Various jeweled trees rained down fruits of money. Great chandana trees were everywhere arranged in rows. Sinking in water trees constantly emitted fine fragrance. Mind-delighting fragrant trees gave off wonderful redolence as adornment. Patra trees stood on all sides. Nyagroda trees were expiring and profuse. Jambunada trees perpetually rained down sweet fruits. Utpala flowers and Padma flowers adorned the ponds and lakes. At this time, the youth Good Wealth saw the rishi seated on some grass spread out beneath the chandana tree. He commanded some 10,000 disciples, some of whom were clothed in deer skin, some of whom were clothed with tree bark, some of whom wore clothes that were woven from grass. Their hair was tied up in top knots or hung down in braids, and they were gathered all around him. Upon seeing this, youth Good Wealth came to his side and prostrated with his 5 limbs on the ground. He said, "I've now met a true good adviser. A good adviser is a door that tends towards all wisdom, for he enables me to enter the true and actual way. A good adviser is a vehicle that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to arrive at the ground of a thus come one. A good adviser is a boat that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to arrive at the jeweled continent of wisdom. A good adviser is a torch that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to produce the brightness of the 10 powers. A good adviser is a road that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to enter the city of nirvana. A good teacher is a lamp that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to recognize safe and perilous paths. A good teacher is a bridge that tends toward all wisdom, for he takes me across treacherous and evil places. A good teacher is a canopy that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to produce the coolness of great kindness. A good teacher is an eye that tends toward all wisdom, for he enables me to obtain the door of seeing the nature of dharmas. A good teacher is a tide that tends toward all wisdom, for he fills me with the water of great compassion." After speaking these words, he arose from the ground. He circumambulated him a countless number of times, then stood before him with palms placed together and said, "Sagely One, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I still do not know how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. I heard the Sagely One is skilled at guiding and teaching. I wish you would speak them for me." At that time, Bhishmottara Nirghosha regarded his group of disciples and said, "Good men, this youth has already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Good men, this youth universally bestows fearlessness upon all living beings. This youth universally grants benefits to all living beings. This youth constantly contemplates the wisdom sea of all Buddhas. This youth wishes to drink the rain of all dharmas of sweet dew. This youth wishes to fathom the sea of all vast and extensive dharmas. This youth wishes to cause living beings to dwell within the sea of wisdom. This youth wishes to universally raise up the great cloud of compassion. This youth wishes to universally rain down the vast and great Dharma rain. This youth wishes universally to illumine the world with the moon of wisdom. This youth wishes to destroy the poisonous heat of afflictions in the world. This youth wishes to increase all the good roots of sentient creatures." At that time, upon hearing these words, Each one of the multitude of immortals scattered superior wondrous fragrant flowers upon good wealth. They prostrated themselves on the ground and made obeisance, circumambulated him in reverence and respect, and said, "This pure youth will most certainly save and protect all living beings. He will most certainly destroy the suffering in all the hells. He will most certainly forever sever the paths of the animals. He will most certainly turn away the realm of King Yama. He will most certainly shut the door of all places of difficulties. He will most certainly dry up the sea of all love and craving. He will most certainly forever destroy the sufferings of the skandhas. He will most certainly forever smash the darkness of ignorance. He will most certainly forever sever the fetters of greed and love. He will most certainly surround the world with the great ring mountain of blessings and virtue. He will most certainly reveal to the world the Sumeru-like great jewel of wisdom. He will most certainly make appear the pure sun of wisdom. He will most certainly reveal and disclose the Dharma treasury of good roots. He will most certainly enable the world to clearly recognize the dangerous and the safe. At that time, Bhishmottara Nirghosha told the multitudes of immortals, "Good men, if there are those who can bring forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, they'll most certainly accomplish the path of all wisdom. This good lad has already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. He will purify the merit and virtue of the ground of all Buddhas." At that time, Bhishmottara Nirghosha told good wealth, "Good men, I've attained the liberation of the Bodhisattva's insurpassable banner." Good wealth asks, "Sagely One, what is the state of the liberation of the insurpassable banner like?" At that time, the Rishi Bhishmottara Nirghosha stretched out his right hand and rubbed good wealth's crown. Then he took good wealth's hand. Thereupon, good wealth immediately saw his own body traveling to worlds as many as dust motes in the Buddha Kshetriyas of the 10 directions. He arrived at the places of Buddhas as many as dust motes in 10 Buddha Kshetriyas. He saw these Buddha Kshetriyas along with their assemblies and the Buddha's marks and characteristics and their various adornments. He also heard the Dharma which the Buddhas proclaimed according to what was liked by the minds of living beings. He completely penetrated every single word and phrase. He received and upheld each of them without any disorder or confusion. He also understood how these Buddhas purified and regulated their vows with various understandings. He also understood how these Buddhas accomplished their powers with pure vows. He also saw the physical characteristics which these Buddhas manifested according to the minds of living beings. He also beheld the great varicolored nets of brightness of these Buddhas, which were pure and perfect. He also understood the power of unobstructed wisdom and great light of these Buddhas. Moreover, he saw himself situated at the places of all these Buddhas, perhaps for 1 day and night, or for 7 days and nights, or half a month, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or 100 million years, or an ayutta of millions of years, or an ayutta of millions of years, or through a duration of half a kalpa, or 1 kalpa, 100 kalpas, 1,000 kalpas, or hundreds of millions, up to and including kalpas as many as dust motes in ineffable Buddha Kshetriyas. At that time, upon being illuminated by the light of liberation of the Bodhisattva's insurpassable banner, the youth good wealth obtained the light of the Vairocana treasury samadhi. Upon illumination by the light of the endless wisdom liberation samadhi, he obtained the light of universally gathering all directions dharani. Upon illumination by the light of the Vajra-wheeled dharani door, he obtained the light of ultimate pure wisdom mind samadhi. Upon illumination by the light of Prajna Paramita of the universal door adornment, he obtained the light from the wheel of Buddha's treasury of emptiness samadhi. Upon illumination by the light of the wheel of all Buddha Dharmas samadhi, he obtained the light from samadhi of endless wisdom of the three periods of time. At that time, the Rishi Bhishmottara Nirghosha let go of the hand of good wealth. Immediately, the youth good wealth saw his own body was still at its original place. At that time, the Rishi asked good wealth, "Good man, do you remember this?" Good wealth said, "Yes, I do. This is due to the power of the sagely one, my good knowing adviser." The Rishi said, "Good man, I only know this liberation of the Bodhisattva's insurpassable banner. But as to how all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas accomplish all supreme samadhis, how they obtain self-mastery with respect to all times, how in the space of a thought they can give rise to the limitless wisdom of all Buddhas, how they use the Buddha's wisdom lamp as adornment and universally illumine the world, how in the space of a single thought they universally enter the states of the three periods of time, how they divide their forms and pervasively travel throughout the 10 directions countries, how their wisdom bodies universally enter all Dharma realms, how according to the minds of living beings they can universally appear before them, how they contemplate their faculties and conduct to benefit them, how they emit pure light, which is extremely delightful. How could I possibly know or speak of their conduct of merit and virtue, of their supreme vows, of their adornments of kshatriyas, of their states of wisdom, of their activities in samadhi, of their spiritual penetrations and transformations, of the playful roaming of their liberation, of the differences of their physical characteristics, of the purity of their sounds, and of the light of their wisdom. Good men, south of here is a village called Ishana, where dwells the Brahman, victorious he. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, the youth good wealth leapt with joy. He bowed at his feet, circumambulated him countless times, and gazed up at him with longing admiration. Then he bade farewell and took his leave. At that time, upon being illuminated by the liberation of the Bodhisattva's insurpassable banner, the youth good wealth dwelled in the inconceivable spiritual power of all Buddhas. He certified to the wisdom of a Bodhisattva's inconceivable liberations and spiritual penetrations. He obtained the inconceivable samadhi wisdom light of a Bodhisattva. He obtained the samadhi wisdom light of saturating and cultivating at all times. He obtained the samadhi wisdom light of understanding that all states rely and dwelt on thought. He obtained the light of wisdom that is supreme in all worlds. In all places he manifested his body. With ultimate wisdom, he proclaimed the Dharma, which is level, equal, non-dual, and without differentiation. With clear and pure wisdom, he universally illumined all states. He could endure and receive all dharmas that he heard. He had pure faith and understanding towards the self-nature of dharmas. He possessed decisive understanding. His mind never abandoned the wonderful conduct of a bodhisattva. He sought all wisdom and never retreated. He obtained the wisdom light of the 10 powers. He diligently sought the wonderful Dharma forever, without tiredness or satiation. With proper cultivation and practice, he entered the Buddhist state. He gave rise to limitless adornments of a bodhisattva. His boundless great vows had all been purified. With a wisdom that is without exhaustion, he knew the nets of boundless worlds. With an uncowardly mind, he rescued limitless seas of living beings. He understood the states of the boundless conduct of a bodhisattva. He perceived the various distinctions of boundless wisdom. He saw the various adornments of boundless worlds. He entered into the subtle states of boundless worlds. He knew the various names and titles of boundless worlds. He knew the various languages and speech of boundless worlds. He knew the various understandings of boundless living beings. He saw the various activities of boundless living beings. He saw the maturation of the conduct of boundless living beings. He saw the different thought of boundless living beings. He recollected his good knowing advisor and traveled progressively until he arrived at the village of Ishana. He saw that victorious heat was cultivating all sorts of ascetic practices in his search for all wisdom. He had masses of fire on all 4 sides like great mountains. In the midst was a mountain of knives, precipitous in height, unending. Climbing to that mountain top, he would cast himself into the fire. At that time, the youth good wealth bowed at his feet, stood, put his palms together, and said, "Sagely One, I have already brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I still do not know how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. I heard that the Sagely One is skilled at guiding and teaching. I wish you would explain this for me." The Brahman said, "Good man, if you can now go up this mountain of knives and throw yourself into the mass of fire, then all your bodhisattva conduct will be purified." At that time, the youth good wealth had this thought: it is difficult to obtain a human body. It is difficult to be apart from all disasters. It is difficult to attain freedom from difficulties. It is difficult to obtain pure dharmas. It is difficult to meet the Buddha. It is difficult to be replete with all faculties. It is difficult to get to hear the Buddha Dharma. It is difficult to get to meet good people. It is difficult to encounter a true good knowing advisor. It is difficult to receive proper teaching that accords with principle. It is difficult to have proper livelihood. It is difficult to get to practice according to the Dharma. Is this not a demon or envoy of a demon? Is this not an evil and treacherous accomplice of demons who feigns the appearance of a bodhisattva and good knowing advisor, who wishes to create difficulty for my good roots, to create difficulty for my lifespan, to obstruct my cultivation of the path of all wisdom, to drag me down so I enter into the evil paths? Does he wish to obstruct my Dharma doors and obstruct my Buddha Dharmas?" While he was having this thought, 10,000 Brahma gods spoke to him from empty space. "Good man, do not have this thought. Do not have this thought. This Sagely One has obtained the light of the Vajra blaze Samadhi. He has brought forth great vigor to save all living beings. His mind is without retreat. He wishes to dry up all the seas of greed and love. He wishes to sever all nets of deviant views. He wishes to consume the fuel of all afflictions. He wishes to shine through the dense forest of all delusions. He wishes to cut off all fear of old age and death. He wishes to break up all the obstructions of the three periods of time. He wishes to emit the light of all dharmas. Good men, we Brahma gods are over-attached to divine views. We claim we are once possessed of self-mastery, that we are capable of creation, that in the world we are the most supreme. Upon seeing the Brahman victorious heat subject his body to the 5 fires, our minds no longer took pleasure in or were attached to our palaces. We could not derive flavor from the dhyana samadhis, so all of us came to where the Brahman was. At that time, the Brahman manifested great ascetic practices with the power of his spiritual penetrations and spoke Dharma for us. He was able to cause all of us to dispel all those views, to get rid of all arrogance, to dwell in great kindness, to practice great compassion, to bring forth a vast great mind, to produce the aspiration for Bodhi, to constantly see all Buddhas, to forever hear wonderful Dharma, so that in all places our minds were unobstructed. Moreover, there were 10,000 demons who from empty space strewed heavenly money gems upon the Brahman. They said to good wealth, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze overshadowed the objects of adornment in all our palaces, so that they became like a clump of ink. It caused us to no longer give rise to pleasure and attachment in their midst. Whereupon we came to where he was with our retinues. The Brahman spoke Dharma for us. He caused us and measureless gods and goddesses all to attain irreversibility from Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Moreover, there were 10,000 kings of the heaven of ease and comfort, who from empty space each strewed heavenly flowers. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that place overshadowed the objects of adornment in all our palaces, so that they became like a clump of ink. It caused us to no longer give rise to love and attachment in their midst. Whereupon we came to where he was with our retinues. This Brahman spoke Dharma for us. He caused us to obtain ease and comfort in our minds, to obtain ease and comfort in the midst of afflictions, to obtain ease and comfort in the midst of undergoing rebirth, to obtain ease and comfort regarding all karmic obstacles, to obtain ease and comfort regarding all samadhis, to obtain ease and comfort regarding articles of adornment, to obtain ease and comfort regarding our lifespans, up to and including being able to obtain ease and comfort regarding all Buddha Dharmas. Moreover, there were 10,000 kings of the heaven of bliss from transformations, who in empty space played heavenly music respectfully as an offering. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze illumined the objects of adornment in our palaces and all the heavenly maidens. It enabled us not to become receptive to pleasures and desire, and not to seek pleasures and desire. Our bodies and minds became gentle and supple. Thereupon, we came to where he was with our multitudes. At that time, the Brahman spoke Dharma for us. He was able to cause our minds to obtain purity, to cause our minds to obtain pure goodness, to cause our minds to obtain gentle suppleness, to cause our minds to obtain happiness, up to and including to cause us to obtain the purity of the 10 powers and purity of body, to give rise to measureless bodies, up to and including to cause us to obtain the Buddha's body, the Buddha's speech, the Buddha's sound, the Buddha's mind, and to perfect and accomplish the wisdom of all wisdoms. Moreover, there were 10,000 Tushita heavenly kings and measureless retinues of gods and goddesses, who in empty space rained down a multitude of wonderful fragrances and bowed in veneration. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, he caused all of us gods and our retinues to be without delight or attachment towards our palaces. Together, we came to where he was and heard him speak Dharma. He was able to cause us not to be greedy for states, to have few desires and no contentment, to bring forth happiness in our minds, to obtain fulfillment in our hearts, to give rise to good roots, to produce the Bodhi resolve, up to and including to perfect all Buddha Dharmas. Moreover, there were 10,000 gods of the heaven of the 33, with retinues of gods and goddesses surrounding them on all sides, who from empty space rained down mandarava flowers respectfully as an offering. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, he caused all of us gods to not give rise to pleasure and attachment toward heavenly music. Together we came to where he was. At that time, for our sake, the Brahman spoke of how dharmas are impermanent and subject to decay. He caused us to renounce and leave all desires and pleasures. He caused us to cut off arrogance and self-indulgence. He caused us to yearn for unsurpassed Bodhi. Moreover, good men, at the time we beheld the Brahman, there were 6 types of quaking on the summit of Mount Sumeru. We were terrified and all brought forth the Bodhi resolve that was firm, solid, and unmoving. Moreover, there were 10,000 dragon kings, specifically the dragon king Airavata, the dragon kings Nanda and Upananda, and so forth, who from empty space rained down black chandana. Measureless dragon maidens played heavenly music and rained down wonderful heavenly flowers and heavenly fragrant water, respectfully as an offering. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze universally illumined all the dragon palaces. It caused the dragon multitudes to be apart from the terror of hot sand and the terror of the golden winged birds, to destroy our hatred and anger, to attain purity and coolness in our bodies, to be without filth and turbidity, to believe and understand on hearing the Dharma, to grow tired of and be repulsed by the destiny of dragons, to repent of and dispel our karmic obstacles with a sincere mind, up to and including to bring forth the intent for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi and to dwell in all wisdom. Moreover, there were 10,000 Yaksha kings, who in empty space respectfully used various articles as offerings to the Brahman and good wealth. They said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, we and our retinues all brought forth a mind of kindness and sympathy towards living beings. All Raksasas, Kumbhandas, and so forth also gave rise to a mind of kindness. Because of this mind of kindness, they did not vex or harm living beings. They came to see us. We, along with them, no longer took pleasure in or were attached to our palaces. Together, we came to where he was. At that time, the Brahman spoke Dharma that responded to our potential. All of us obtained peace and joy in body and mind. He also caused measureless yakshas, raksasas, kumbhandas, and so forth to produce the mind for unsurpassed Bodhi. Moreover, there were 10,000 Gandharva kings in empty space, who said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze illuminated our palaces, causing all of us to experience inconceivable and measureless joy. For this reason, we came to where he was. This Brahman spoke Dharma for us and enabled us to attain irreversibility from Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Moreover, there were 10,000 Asura kings who emerged from the great sea to dwell in empty space. They knelt on their right knees, put their palms together, and bowing forward, said, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, our Asura palaces, the great sea, and the great earth all trembled and shook. These caused us to renounce our arrogance and self-indulgence. For this reason we came to where he was and heard him speak the Dharma. We renounced and separated from flattery and deceit, and peacefully dwelt on the ground of patience. We became firm, solid, and unmoving, and perfected the 10 powers. Moreover, there were 10,000 Garuda kings, courageous might upholding king, who acted as their leader, transformed himself into a pure youth of an externally sway. In empty space, he sang out these words, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze illumined our palaces. Everything quaked and trembled, and everyone was terrified. For this reason, we came to where he was. At that time, the Brahman spoke Dharma that responded to our potential. He caused us to cultivate and practice great kindness, to love great compassion, to cross over the sea of birth and death, to rescue living beings from the mud of desire, to extol the resolve for Bodhi, to give rise to the wisdom of expedience, and according to their potential, to tame and subdue living beings. Moreover, there were 10,000 Kinnara kings, who from empty space sang out these words, "Good men, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, all the tala trees, the net of jeweled bells, the ribbons of precious silks, the musical trees, the trees of wondrous jewels, and the musical instruments in the palaces we inhabited, spontaneously emitted sounds of the Buddha, sounds of the Dharma, sounds of the irreversible Sangha, and sounds of the vow to seek unsurpassed Bodhi. These sounds proclaimed how in a certain direction, in a certain country, a certain bodhisattva brought forth the Bodhi resolve, or how in a certain direction, in a certain country, a certain bodhisattva cultivated ascetic practices, renouncing that which is difficult to renounce, up to the point of purifying the conduct of all wisdom. How in a certain direction, in a certain country, a certain bodhisattva went to a way place, up to and including how in a certain direction, in a certain country, a certain thus come one, having finished the work of a Buddha, entered parinirvana. Good men, if a person were to grind the grasses and trees in Jambudvipa into motes of dust, the extent of the number of those motes of dust could still be known, but no one can know the extent of the names of bodhisattvas, the names of thus come ones, the great vows they brought forth, the conducts they cultivated, and so forth, which were proclaimed by the jeweled tala trees, up to and including the sounds played by the musical instruments within our palaces. Good men, upon hearing these sounds of the Buddha, sounds of the Dharma, and sounds of the Bodhisattva Sangha, We brought forth great joy, and came to where he was. Thereupon the Brahman spoke Dharma that responded to our potential, and caused us and measureless other living beings to obtain irreversibility from Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi. Moreover, there were measureless gods of the desire realm, who in empty space respectfully made offerings of wonderful articles. They sang out these words, "Good man, when this Brahman subjected his body to the 5 fires, the light from that blaze illumined the Avicii and all the other hells. All the pains we were undergoing came to a rest. Upon seeing the light from this blaze, our minds brought forth pure faith. Because of this mind of faith, when our lives were terminated, we were reborn in the heavens. Being aware of this depth of kindness, we came to gaze up at him, respectfully in admiration, without any satiation. At that time, the Brahman spoke Dharma for us, and caused measureless living beings to give rise to the Bodhi resolve. When the youth Good Wealth heard such Dharma, his mind became greatly joyous. Toward the Brahman, he produced a thought that he was a true and actual good knowing adviser. He bowed in veneration and sang out these words, "Here in this place, I regarded the great sage, the good knowing adviser, with a mind that was not wholesome. I only hope that the sagely one will accept my repentance for my mistake." At that time, the Brahman spoke verses for Good Wealth. If there are bodhisattvas who accord with the good knowing adviser's teaching, then towards all they'll have no doubt or fear, but dwell serene, their minds unmoving. Know that people such as these will most certainly reap great vast benefits. Seated beneath the Bodhi tree, they'll accomplish unsurpassed enlightenment. At that time, the youth Good Wealth immediately ascended the mountain of knives and threw himself into the masses of fire. Not having even reached its midst, he instantaneously obtained the Bodhisattva Samadhi of great dwelling. Right upon coming into contact with the blaze, he moreover attained the Bodhisattva Samadhi of still quiet bliss and spiritual penetrations. Good Wealth said, "Strange indeed, sagely one, when my body came into contact with this mountain of knives and great masses of fire, I felt peaceful, serene, and joyous." At that time, the Brahman told Good Wealth, "Good man, I've only attained this liberation of the never-ending wheel of bodhisattvas. As to how the blaze of great merit and virtue of all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, consumes the view delusions of living beings, so that none remains, how they absolutely will not retreat, how their minds are without limit or exhaustion, how their minds are without laxness or laziness, how their minds are without cowardice or weakness, how they bring forth a mind that is like a Vajra treasury and Narayana, and also the mind of swiftly cultivating all conducts without delay or tardiness, how with their vows like the wind wheel they universally uphold the great resolve to be vigorous in all kinds of ways without retreat. How can I possibly know or speak of such conducts of merit and virtue? Good men, south of here, in a city called Lion's Courageous Invigoration, is a maiden by the name of Kind Conduct. Go to where she is and ask her how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva way." At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at his feet, circumambulated him countless times, bade farewell, and left. Dwelling of the anointment of the crown. At that time, the youth Good Wealth gave rise to a mind of utmost veneration and honor towards the good knowing adviser. He pronounced vast, great, pure understanding. He was forever mindful of the great vehicle. He single-mindedly sought the Buddha's wisdom. He wished to see all Buddhas. He contemplated the states of the Dharma. Unobstructed wisdom constantly appeared before him. Regarding all Dharmas, he decisively understood the reality limit, the eternally dwelling limit, the limit of all kashanas of the three periods of time, the limit of being like empty space, the limit of non-duality, the limit of non-differentiation of all dharmas, the limit of non-obstruction of all meanings, the limit of no loss or damage through all kalpas, the limit of the non-limit of all thus come once. Towards all Buddhas, his mind was without discrimination. He smashed the net of the multitudes of thoughts. He was apart from attachments. He did not grasp at the multitudes of all Buddhas' assemblies and way places. Neither did he grasp at the Buddha's pure lands. He knew all living beings are without a self. He knew all sounds are like echoes. He knew all forms are like reflections. He gradually went south and arrived at the city of lions, courageous invigoration. He sought everywhere for the maiden-kind conduct. He heard that this maiden was a daughter of the King Lion banner, that 500 maidens served as her attendants, that she dwelt in the palace of Vairochana treasury, that she proclaimed wonderful Dharma while seated upon the throne, with a base of dragon victorious chandana and gold-threaded heavenly net upholstery. Upon hearing this, Good Wealth went to the palace gate to try to see that maiden. He saw measureless multitudes entering the palace. Good Wealth asked them, "Where are all of you going?" They answered, "We wish to go to the maiden-kind conduct, to listen to and receive the wonderful Dharma." The youth Good Wealth immediately had this thought, "Since this palace gate is without bars or obstruction, I should also go in." After Good Wealth went in, he gazed at the Vairochana treasury palace. The ground was made of crystal. Vaidurya fashioned the pillars. Vajra served as walls. Jambunada gold formed the partitions. Hundreds of thousands of lights made up the windows and doors. Asankhya money gems served as ornaments. Jeweled treasury money mirrors were hung all around as adornments. It was decorated with the world's foremost money gems. Limitless jeweled nets were draped over it. Hundreds of thousands of golden bells emitted wondrous sounds. All such inconceivable multitudes of jewels and more served as its adornments. The maiden-kind conduct had golden-hued skin. Her eyes were of violet color, and her hair was indigo. With Brahma sounds she proclaimed the Dharma. Upon seeing all this, Good Wealth bowed at her feet, circumambulated her countless times, put his palms together, stood before her and said, "Sagely One, I have previously brought forth the resolve for Anuttara Sankhya Sambodhi, but I still do not know how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and how he cultivates the bodhisattva path. I heard that the Sagely One is adept at guiding and teaching living beings. I wish you would speak them for me." At that time, the maiden-kind conduct told Good Wealth, "Good man, you should regard the adornments of my palace." Good Wealth made obeisance and proceeded to look all around him, on every wall, on every pillar, in every mirror, in every image, in every shape, in every money gem, in every object of adornment, in every golden bell, in every jeweled tree, in every jeweled shape of image, in every jeweled bead. He completely saw the reflections of all thus come once. From their bringing forth of the initial resolve, their cultivating of the bodhisattva conduct, their accomplishing and fulfilling of great vows, their becoming replete with merit and virtue, their accomplishment of equal and proper enlightenment, their turning of the wonderful Dharma wheel, up to and including their manifesting entry into nirvana. There were none of these images that did not appear. It was as when the sun, moon, stars, and myriad phenomena of the sky can universally be seen reflected in clear water. All of this came about through the power of good roots from past lives of the maiden kind conduct. At that time, the youth Good Wealth recollected and was mindful of the appearance of all the Buddhas he had seen. Putting his palms together, he gazed up respectfully at the maiden kind conduct. At that time, the maiden told Good Wealth, "Good man, this is the door of universal adornment of Prajna Paramita. I've sought and obtained this Dharma in the presence of Buddhas to the number of sand grains in 36 Ganges rivers. Each of those thus come ones used a different door to cause me to enter this door of universal adornment of Prajna Paramita. What one Buddha had proclaimed, the rest of the Buddhas would not repeat." Good Wealth asked, "Sagely One, what are the states connected with this door of universal adornment of Prajna Paramita?" The maiden said, "Good man, when I enter this door of universal adornment of Prajna Paramita, I accord with my intent to reflect and contemplate, recollect and discriminate, and thereupon obtain the door of universality of Dharani. A million asankhya Dharani doors all manifest before me. Specifically, the Dharani door of Buddha Kshatriyas, the Dharani door of Buddhas, the Dharani door of Dharma, the Dharani door of living beings, the Dharani door of the past, the Dharani door of the future, the Dharani door of the present, the Dharani door of the eternally abiding limit, the Dharani door of blessings and virtue, the Dharani door of the aids to the way of blessings and virtue, the Dharani door of wisdom, the Dharani door of the aids to the way of wisdom, the Dharani door of all vows, the Dharani door of delineating all vows, the Dharani door of accumulating all conducts, the Dharani door of pure conduct, the Dharani door of perfect and full conduct, the Dharani door of karma, the Dharani door of karma without loss or damage, the Dharani door of the flowing of karma, the Dharani door of affairs created by karma, the Dharani door of renouncing and being apart from evil karma, the Dharani door of cultivating proper karma, the Dharani door of self-mastery of karma, the Dharani door of wholesome conduct, the Dharani door of upholding wholesome conduct, the Dharani door of samadhi, the Dharani door of the samadhi of compliance, the Dharani door of the samadhi of contemplation, the Dharani door of the states of samadhi, the Dharani door of rising from samadhi, the Dharani door of spiritual penetrations, the Dharani door of the sea of the mind, the Dharani door of various minds, the Dharani door of the straight mind, the Dharani door of illumining the dense forest of the mind, the Dharani door of the purity of a regulated mind, the Dharani door of knowing the origins of living beings, the Dharani door of knowing the activity of afflictions of living beings, the Dharani door of the habits of afflictions, the Dharani door of knowing the expedients to counteract afflictions, the Dharani door of knowing all living beings' understandings, the Dharani door of knowing living beings' conducts, the Dharani door of knowing the differences in living beings' conducts, the Dharani door of knowing living beings' natures, the Dharani door of knowing living beings' desires, the Dharani door of knowing living beings' thoughts, the Dharani door of universally seeing the 10 directions, the Dharani door of speaking Dharma, the Dharani door of great compassion, the Dharani door of great kindness, the Dharani door of still quietude, the Dharani door of pathways of languages, the Dharani door of both experience and non-experience, the Dharani door of compliance, the Dharani door of differences, the Dharani door of universal entry, the Dharani door of the limit of non-obstruction, the Dharani door of the universal pervasion, the Dharani door of the Dharma of Buddhas, the Dharani door of the Dharma of Bodhisattvas, the Dharani door of the Dharma of sound hearers, the Dharani door of the Dharma of those solitarily enlightened, the Dharani door of worldly dharmas, the Dharani door of the formation of worlds, the Dharani door of the decay of worlds, the Dharani door of the dwelling of worlds, the Dharani door of the pure worlds, the Dharani door of the defiled worlds, the Dharani door of manifesting purity in defiled worlds, the Dharani door of manifesting defilement in pure worlds, the Dharani door of completely defiled worlds, the Dharani door of completely pure worlds, the Dharani door of level and flat worlds, the Dharani door of worlds that are not level and flat, the Dharani door of inverted worlds, the Dharani door of worlds like Indra's net, the Dharani door of the turnings of worlds, the Dharani door of knowing how they dwell in reliance on thought, the Dharani door of the subtle entering into the cause, the Dharani door of the cause entering into the subtle, the Dharani door of seeing all Buddhas, the Dharani door of discriminating the bodies of Buddhas, the Dharani door of the nets of adornments of the Buddhist likes, the Dharani door of the Buddha's perfect sound, the Dharani door of the Buddha's Dharma wheel, the Dharani door of the accomplishing the Buddha's Dharma wheel, the Dharani door of the Buddha's different Dharma wheels, the Dharani door of the Buddha's undifferentiated Dharma wheels, the Dharani door of the Buddha's explanation of Dharma wheels, the Dharani door of the Buddha's turnings of Dharma wheels, the Dharani door of being able to perform the Buddha's deeds, the Dharani door of discriminating the Buddha's multitudes and assemblies, the Dharani door of entering the Buddha's multitudes and assemblies, the Dharani door of the Buddha's power of universal illumination, the Dharani door of all Buddha's samadhis, the Dharani door of easy and comfortable functioning of all the Buddha's samadhis, the Dharani door of all the Buddha's dwellings, the Dharani door of all Buddha's upholdings, the Dharani door of all the Buddha's transformations, the Dharani door of the Buddha's knowing the workings of living beings' minds, the Dharani door of all Buddha's spiritual penetrations and transformational manifestations, the Dharani door of dwelling in the Tushita Heaven Palace, up to and including manifesting entry into Nirvana, the Dharani door of benefiting limitless living beings, the Dharani door of entering most profound dharmas, the Dharani door of entering subtle and wonderful Dharma, the Dharani door of the Bodhi mind, the Dharani door of giving rise to the Bodhi mind, the Dharani door of aiding the Bodhi mind, the Dharani door of all vows, the Dharani door of all conducts, the Dharani door of spiritual penetrations, the Dharani door of escapings, the Dharani door of purity of uniting and upholding, the Dharani door of purity of the wheel of knowledge, the Dharani door, of purity of wisdom, the Dharani door of the limitlessness of Bodhi, the Dharani door of purity of one's own mind. Good men, I only know this door of universal adornment of Prajna Paramita as to how all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, possess vast and great minds that are like the realm of empty space, how they enter the Dharma realm, how they fully accomplish blessings and virtue, how they dwell in transcendental dharmas, how they are far apart from worldly conduct, how their wisdom eye is without coverings, how they universally contemplate the Dharma realm, how their wisdom mind is vast and great, just like empty space, how they can clearly see all states, how they attain the great brightness treasury of the ground of non-obstruction, how they are adept at discriminating the meanings of all dharmas, how they cause in worldly conduct, yet do not become defiled by worldly dharmas, how they can benefit the world, yet not be damaged by the world, how they universally act as places of reliance for all worlds, how they universally know the activities in all living beings' minds, how they speak dharma according to their potential, how they constantly attain self-mastery with respect to all times. How could I possibly know or speak about such conduct of merit and virtue? Good men, south of here in the kingdom called Three Eyes is a bhikshu named Good-Looking. Go to where he is and ask him how a bodhisattva studies the bodhisattva conduct and cultivates the bodhisattva path. At that time, the youth Good Wealth bowed at her feet, circumambulated her countless times, gazed up at her in longing admiration, bade farewell, and took his leave.